doing the presentation or some portion of it. And when you're ready, Lucian and all, you will let us know.
Go ahead, Alex. You go right ahead.
We can go ahead?
Yes.
Okay, and are we on recording, please?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. All right, welcome. So I think we've gone over the introductions. So Jordan, are you our first up? We're going to be talking about the Lower Manhattan Coastal Resiliency plans. This is the quarterly update, and we're very excited and encouraged to have you all here. So take it away.
Excellent. Thanks, Alice, for that kind intro. So I know a number of folks have joined us over the years for updates similar to this. This is the Lower Manhattan Coastal Resilience quarterly update. The idea being providing background across all of our projects in the Lower Manhattan Coastal Resiliency area. We have a couple additional topics that I'll address at the opening of our conversation today, focusing on the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers HATS study.
Did you stop it?
And design flood elevation.
Stop it.
If I could ask those that are not on mute, they could go on mute, that would be great. So with that, let's get into it. Next slide. So once again, here you can see what we'll be walking through tonight, focusing on the recent HATS study that was released by the Army Corps, design flood elevation and its relation to our efforts, and updates across all of the projects that make up the LMCR portfolio, as well as touching on the future engagement opportunities that we'll be getting into. And next slide. So I know that this board has received a presentation from the Army Corps on their HATS study. This is the harbor and tributary study. So some folks may be familiar, but it is an effort that has been going on the last several years, roughly just under $20 million effort that is a partnership between the Army Corps, New York DEC, New Jersey DEP, those are the federal and state sponsors, as well as our office, broader city of New York. This is an effort that started in 2016, was paused in February 2020 due to funding constraints, and then resumed this past October. So you can tell here that the study area is enormous. It's 25 counties in New York and New Jersey, covering a population of 16 million, including New York City and the 6 most populated cities in New Jersey. So it's not just focusing on Lower Manhattan, not even just all of New York City. It's a region-wide effort. Next slide. And in this analysis, the Army Corps proposed 6 different alternatives. And so very quickly, just to give you a sense, they range from efforts that are focused more on kind of in-water large barriers at the one extreme, to kind of the other side, being more focused on coastal measures. And so that's the other alternative. And so within those, there are a variety of structural measures, flood walls, floodgates. I mentioned those in-water surge barriers, berms, levees, and kind of other things that may be a little bit more natural seeming. And each of the kind of measures are independent and need to, and just as we've talked about over the years, the kind of components of the LMCR plan independent, this is kind of a similar thought, that they need to operate independently and be technically feasible on their own. Next slide. And so the big update from the Corps, the city learned back in September that they selected what they're calling alternative 3B. And you can see there on map what that effectively looks like. It's a $52 billion plan and would require 14 years to complete construction. That would be starting in 2030. So between now, when they've released this tentatively selected plan, and then 2030 would be additional environmental review, obviously working towards potential appropriations and other efforts. So I think you're looking towards the 2040s or 2050s when this effort would be complete. 3B is, as I mentioned before, there was kind of the extremes of the large inner water barriers, and at the other side, the kind of coastal measures is I would describe kind of in between. It does have some in-water surge barriers, although it doesn't have the very large Verrazano one that has come up in the past, the kind of massive in-water barrier. But this has 12 of those in-water surge barriers, as well as neighborhood level protection. You can see there, obviously, what they're showing for Lower Manhattan, East Harlem, parts of Brooklyn, Queens, kind of smaller efforts in the Bronx, as well as Staten Island. That's shown there in the black. Next slide, you can see a little bit more zoomed in. Diana, if you're able to move to the next one. This is provided from the Army Corps, gives you a sense of what exactly they're proposing for Lower Manhattan. So that's primarily kind of a large flood wall, that's the yellow color, some deployable measures in the Battery Park City area showing what they're calling an elevated promenade. But essentially it's a combination of large flood barriers, some deployable measures. And it runs, where the BMCR project is moving forward all the way up to 34th Street on the west side. And one other note, and then I'll do some kind of high level points on this. If we go to the next slide. Look closely, I know many of you were digging through their 520 plus page report. But there is a special note on Financial District and Seaport. This is the effort that we've been undertaking in coordination with the Army Corps and in coordination with their regulatory division. And so this notes that partnership and the conversations that have been going on and that will continue. So obviously there's been kind of coordination. They're very familiar with what we're doing. And so, it was noted as part of their efforts. And obviously, our approach extending into the water different than what they're showing. Big picture, this is a region-wide analysis. We think it's important work, and we will continue to partner with them. But to be clear, this is not a funded effort, and you can see, some of the kind of longer timelines for some of these efforts. So the city naturally is continuing our efforts across Lower Manhattan because we know the risk is real. We know kind of each day, kind of the threat doesn't go away, and so we continue advancing our own efforts once again while supporting their process moving forward. So those are the high level points, and happy to get into any more details during the Q&A after this. Next piece, wanted to dig into the design flood elevation and its connection to the efforts across the Lower Manhattan portfolio. And to help me with that, I've brought Ronnie Dietz from Arcadis, international engineering firm who's specialized in these efforts a number of places and have helped lead the master plan to walk through this in the next couple slides. Ronnie?
Great. Can everyone hear me all right? All right. So what I'm going to do on these next few slides, I'm going to give a high-level overview as to what is a design flood elevation, what are the different components, Where are there similarities? And then also, why does that sometimes feel like differences across the LMCR portfolio? So to start, design flood elevation, also referred to sometimes as the DFE, it's the minimum elevation that is defined by which a structure is to be elevated or flood proofed. So often there can be a flood event, and this will be higher than that to provide protection. To calculate the DFE, there are a couple of different components, and we'll go through each of these on the next slide. The first, though, is looking at high tide. The next is the FEMA still water elevation, which is really your design criteria. That's what you pull that number from. There's then sea level rise, thinking about how sea levels may change in the future based on the project's useful life. And then factoring in waves, and not only the wave environment, but also how that wave will interact with the flood protection measures in a study area. All of this together equates to the building blocks of ultimately a design flood elevation. We'll talk through each of them, but just to note that each has a large impact on the design flood. And it varies depending on what type of project you're looking at, over what time frame, and what the relative wave climate is. The other piece to just note is that while there's guidance out there for the projects that are looking for FEMA accreditation, so within the LMCR portfolio, that's BMCR and BPCA. The FIDI project is being designed to this standard, but funding has yet to be identified. These projects need to comply with a FEMA regulation, a FEMA document, FEMA guidance, that's called 44 CFR 6510. It sets forth design standards that ultimately, if a project is looking to be demapped afterwards, so the project is looking to be accredited, the project is looking to remap the areas behind it, it needs to demonstrate that it's met the criteria put forth in this document. So just a couple of the key considerations as we dive into what the different elements are. I think the other thing to just note, and Jordan, I hope it's okay to say it, but we are pulling together a memo, and it will go into all of this in much greater detail. We hope to have that later this week for everyone to review, and also, of course, any questions that you have, but we are going to be providing in writing more detail on everything that is discussed tonight. So if we go to the next slide, so each of the projects in the LMCR portfolio are based on the same underlying principles. They all look at those same factors that were on the other slide. So the design storm event, sea level rise, and how waves impact the structure and how that relative localized wave climate plays into the design flood elevation. So to break down each of these, let's start with the design storm event. So for each project in the LMCR portfolio, the project team started by obtaining the still water elevation from FEMA. And FEMA does their own analysis to determine these numbers. It comes from the FIS, which is the flood insurance study. And FEMA establishes the still water elevation, which is the height of water during a flood event, not accounting for waves, for a range of hypothetical storms. A hypothetical storm is something that represents a variety of different storms, and it has a certain potential frequency of recurrence. So this can be the 10-year storm, the 50-year storm, 100-year storm, 500-year storm. In New York, and for a lot of projects that design to FEMA standards, it's the 100-year that we look at because that is what is ultimately mapped in the flood insurance rate maps. So often that number becomes a design principle in terms of the level of design protection that we look to achieve. That's not to say, though, that you can't go beyond that. Critical facilities, when you think about hospitals, FEMA mandates that they are designed to the 500-year, and projects can also be designed to a storm event lower than the 100-year and still provide substantial flood risk benefit. Even a storm that is a 50-year storm, so has a 2% chance of occurring in any given year, is still a very low frequency storm and providing benefit to an area in terms of that protection. So to find this number, what the project team would do is basically go to the flood insurance study, look up a transect or a cross section closest to the project's area to determine the still water elevation there. Within the Lower Manhattan Coastal Resilience portfolio, these elevations vary from about 11 to 11.3 feet. So basically, there's not a ton of variation in this number in terms of how it plays out. And that still water piece, it varies by, say, 0.3 of a foot between the whole LMCR from north to south. The other thing to note is that these numbers right now come from the FEMA PFRM. This approach is consistent with Local Law 96. So Local Law 96 back in 2013, it required that New York City Building Code and therefore the coastal protection projects, a part of that, needed to use the more restrictive of either FEMA's effective flood maps, so those dated to right around 2007, or any preliminary flood maps that have been released since then. So you have some in 2013, and then there was an update in 2015. All of the resiliency projects in the LMCR portfolio are designed in accordance with this practice. I will acknowledge that in 2016, the city challenged the FEMA preliminary flood insurance rate maps, believing those values were too high. While the city did successfully win that appeal, new flood insurance rate maps have yet to be released. And in compliance with local law, the 2015 preliminary flood insurance rate maps are the best practice and are what's required in determining the still water elevation. And it's now up to FEMA to go and do their own analysis, and it's still uncertain what ultimately will come back, even though the city successfully won those appeals. And I believe it's still a few years out before those updated maps would be released. So just a little bit of context in terms of that design storm event, but the summary on that piece is it's from the FEMA flood insurance study. It's based on the design storm criteria, and within the LMCR portfolio, it really doesn't vary too much. We're talking about 11 to 11.3 feet. So then the next piece of this is sea level rise. Oh, sorry. So for all LMCR projects, the City of New York advises using sea level rise data provided by the New York City Panel on Climate Change, so the NPCC. The NPCC is a 20-member independent advisory body. They synthesize scientific information on climate change and are really here to advise policymakers on local resiliency and adaptation strategies and look at a variety of things from rising temperatures, increased flooding, sea level rise, and other hazards. But they are considered the best in class and the best available information for New York City. Each project in the LMCR portfolio uses NPCC's 90th percentile projection for future sea level rise. This is the most conservative, which means it's assuming that ice is melting on pace, if not faster, than what we're seeing right now. It's not assuming that there's any substantial carbon reductions, but it is the best practice and what is advised, and all projects across the LMCR portfolio are using this 90th percentile. In the 2050s, this number is 30 inches or about 2.5 feet. And then by 2100, this is 75 inches or 6.5 feet. So that's where you get some variety within the portfolio, depending on what its design time frame is. But in general, it is based on the same underlying principle of where that data came from, and that's NPCC. So then the last piece of this is really waves. And arguably the most variable factor in determining the design flood elevation is the effect of waves. And when I talk about wave impacts, I'm referring to really how the wave interacts with both the shoreline and then also the flood defense structure. So the effect of waves varies across the study area due to a specific sites or project area's location relative to the New York Harbor. So if we actually, I think, Diana, you're driving the slides. If you don't mind toggling one forward. So what this map here just shows, and we'll toggle back, but I think it's a really helpful graphic, is that waves within the study area vary. And waves that are further in the south which is where you see the darker blue colors down by the battery, they have more space for the waves to generate. So waves in the study area, they're locally generated. So you've got wind blowing across open water, and this results in a term that's called fetch. And really, it's the amount of space that a wave has to gain energy before reaching land. So this area is just bigger, which means the battery is more exposed, and you can be down there and it feels windier. It's always in the winter a little chillier. You've got the winds blowing. You have less protection in that area than as you go up the East River and you're, say, standing in the Seaport, or you go up the Hudson and you're standing in Battery Park City. So this is just an important thing because this really does drive a large variety of why we see different waves as part of these projects. So if I could ask that we toggle back a slide. So after the wave reaches the shoreline, that wave breaks. That wave interacts with topography, with the structures, and this is called run-up. So you can think about being on a beach and you think about standing in the water and then the wave breaks as it hits the sand. It's basically that same principle. Just right now, it's often for a storm, we're talking about a wave breaking on a flood wall or a levee or some other type of hardened structure that's designed to absorb and to control the forces of that wave. So the height of that wave, though, that reaches the flood defense structure can vary greatly. It can be varying based on the topography, based on the vegetation, based on even where that flood protection is. Is it located at the bulkhead line? Is it located 50 feet, 500 feet inland? The shape of the structure, whether it's a vertical wall or is it sloped, like a levee or a berm, all of these things can influence how a wave interacts with the flood protection system. The other thing to just note, if a project is seeking FEMA accreditation, so again, that would be the BMCR and the Battery Park City Resilience projects, FEMA specifies some of the wave effect criteria for the flood protection system. So that is something that FEMA would look to and as it's reviewing the application for map revision as part of the process. So basically, we have these three underlying principles. And I know I've just gone through a lot of terms in engineering, but it really comes down to what level of protection is a project designing for, what sea level rise projection is being used, and then what is the localized wave climate, and how does that structure interact with the waves as they're breaking. So even if a project uses all of the same methods and principles, this can result in different design flood elevations. And if we go to the next slide. So different geographies and then also different implementation needs ultimately produce different designs and variations. So as I mentioned with the waves, for the Lmcr portfolio, the waves are bigger in the south near the battery. And that's just due to the relative the relative location in the New York Harbor. On-land conditions also can drive the design. In some areas, there's less space to site flood defense, and you're confined to being right at the bulkhead, or you have to be further inland. And this isn't only space above ground, but it also is the space that you have available below ground. So when you think about these flood protection structures, they have a really big foundation more times than not, so that when a wave does hit, it has the foundation needed to not overtop. And this takes up more space than even often the height in the vertical sense. So this can really drive the design. And then the last piece of this is also implementation timelines and requirements. A lot of these projects within the Lmcr portfolio were fortunate to have received additional funds beyond city capital or bonds in order to move swiftly and quickly and reduce flood risk in these areas. At the same time, though, these project awards do have stipulations often. So the HUD NDRC funds, they talk about needing to design to be FEMA accredited. So that's going to drive a lot of how the project's DFE is realized. And then these projects also need to be implemented within a certain time frame, which means that you're often going to stay away from complex permitting pathways. You're going to try to stay within the public right-of-way, and you're going to look for an alignment that minimizes utility and other conflicts. So all of this ultimately can result in the same design criteria, but different design flood elevations across projects. With that, Jordan, I will pass it back to you to perhaps build on anything on this slide, and then also talk a little bit more about the projects.
Excellent. Thanks, Ronnie. I know there will be a quiz at the end where people will have to tell us how many NPCC members there are. So I hope you were paying close attention to her presentation. I know that was very informative, so appreciate it. Actually, if we could go to the next slide. So to give you a sense, once again, the kind of that foundation and the urgency with which the LMCR team is responding. You can see here kind of all the projects laid out on top of each other. The first, we can call out the interim flood protection measures. That's the dotted black line in the Seaport and two bridges. That is an effort that is in place, and certainly something that is responding and helps us reduce risk today. We also have a series of capital projects, the Seaport and battery coastal resilience that will protect against tidal flooding and smaller, not Sandy-like, but more frequent coastal storms. And so those are the efforts you see there in pink. The next layer in blue, the BMCR project, that's Brooklyn Bridge to Montgomery in two bridges, and the Battery Park City projects. Those are designed to protect storm surge and tidal flooding. Those are kind of long-term efforts, but being built today. The area in purple there, that's the Financial District and Seaport Climate Resilience Plan. That is a planning process, once again, earlier in stage, but it is designed to work in concert with those two areas in pink. So effectively, we are reducing risk today in those areas. We are protecting against sea level rise and those smaller coastal storms, while also preparing ourselves for the future. So together, that is how the LMCR portfolio works and will help to reduce risk across this district. Next slide. And so maybe in a little bit more attractive terms, getting away from the map, I think this gives you a sense of that last point. Really kind of responding to the urgency with IFPM in place there, as well as the Hugh L. Carey Tunnel Gate, a number of other efforts we can go into, whether it's the work that the MTA has done or Con Ed, but all, when the question is raised, are we safer against a 10-year or against a Sandy storm? The answer is certainly yes. We also have these additional efforts, the BMCR project, Battery Coastal, a number of other efforts that kind of are reducing risk now and will be done in concert with other efforts. Once again, you see on the right hand there the 5-day Seaport plan, where we are making investments for the long-term future of this area. Next slide. And so just in sum, and I always want to kind of come back to this slide, overall, this is $1 billion worth of city investments that span kind of a number of efforts, some that have been fueled by previous federal grants, as Ronnie mentioned before, others that the city and Battery Park City are embarking, but all told, kind of an overall climate adaptation strategy to protect this district. Next slide. And I know there's going to be a conversation later tonight on kind of goals and values and principles as it relates to LMCR and kind of coastal resiliency. Here are a few that I know that we've shared with the community board before. may be helpful in driving the conversation. Certainly, this is not kind of all inclusive of all the issues that we address, but just want to reiterate some of the points, and a lot of these were captured before, using the latest climate science to advance risk reduction projects, communicating the multi-hazard risk. So it's not just about those coastal storms, but it's sea level rise, it's precipitation, it's heat in certain places. It's about creating an equitable and inclusive public engagement process. And I know that it's been a little bit harder during COVID times. And I know Alice wants us to do more walking tours. Certainly something we'd love to do. Maybe not when it gets really cold in a month or two, but I think that's across these projects. I know that's a highlight for project teams to be able to get out there and talk through what we're thinking and some of our implementation measures. It's also something that we do have to prioritize. We focus on historic assets, where we can, maximizing ecologically sensitive design and sustainability that is adaptable over time, and creates an accessible public realm for all. Where we can, maximizing federal and state investment. This is a unique period where there are a number of new opportunities at both of, certainly the Infrastructure Investment Act and the Inflation Reduction Act, kind of new federal opportunities, as well as the potential Bond Act that will go to voters at the state level later this year. And something we spent a lot of time on earlier this summer, clear communication of the construction impacts, because these are infrastructure projects that can be create some challenges, as we all know, and as very clear to you. They're important in reducing risk and making sure we have a viable Lower Manhattan moving forward. Next slide. And also just wanted to share this before we get into the projects. Gives you a sense of where we are in terms of design, procurement, towards construction. Both the BMCR project and the South Battery Park City project are leading, looking towards construction starts later this year. Battery Coastal and the Northwest Battery Park City efforts following behind that in 2023. Seaport Coastal Resilience is our newest capital project that we'll be spending some time on later tonight. And the FIDI Seaport Master Plan, once again, important effort, but is in planning stages. So we will know more on exact dates as we move forward. And so with that, we'll hand off to the project teams, and specifically the Battery Park City Authority.
Thanks, Jordan. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. So we just want to give an update on where we are with the South Battery Park City Resiliency. As Jordan mentioned, we're going to be starting construction very soon. What we're calling phase 1 work, which is the Wagner Park and Museum of Jewish Heritage site, and also the Wagner Park Pavilion, is expected to start on the pavilion work in the next few weeks. In both instances, the contracts have been awarded. The MJH and Wagner site actually was awarded last week. For the phase 2, which is the Pier A battery and the interior drainage, we expect that RFP to be issued next month, with the construction start heading towards the winter of this year or early winter next year for that work as well. So as we've said before, the project duration is approximately 2 years, 24 months. So that'll put us basically in the fall of 2024 for completion. And just a note on environmental review, we did publish our final EIS, which is reflective of all the comments that we received after our draft EIS hearing, which was earlier this year in May. So responses to comments, as well as all of the updated sections based on feedback we got from agencies and members of the public, is on our website. And our notice of finding statement was also approved by our board last week. Next slide, please. And just to revisit, so we did present this, I believe, at the last LMCR. We also did talk about this at the last Battery Park City Committee meeting as well. But this is the construction sort of staging plan for that first phase of work, which is the Wagner Park Pavilion and Museum of Jewish Heritage work. we had heard a lot from the community about the concern here along First Place. So we've been working and meeting with the school, we've been meeting with the Museum of Jewish Heritage to make sure that we're actually working through any impacts to that area, understanding there's a lot of pedestrian traffic there as well. So just want to revisit this image as well. There'll be a construction fence, and you can see in this turquoise edge here, there'll be a pedestrian path in the street. Just to follow up, I know the board had asked about a temporary bike lane along Battery Place, and we've had discussions and on-site visits with City DOT to discuss that and sort of the lengths of where that'll be. So we expect some follow-up on that in the coming weeks. And we can certainly update the board on that. Next slide, please. So we've also, now that we are sort of about to commence construction, we do have a dedicated construction community liaison who will be attending the board's district service cabinet meetings, also attending committee meetings for updates. And we just wanted to post his contact information. His name is Rick Fogarty. This is his direct phone number. We also have a project email address that is monitored all the time, where we basically will take any comments or questions you have about the project, the timing, the schedule. You can also obviously send that to us by mail if you want to use snail mail, which not many people do these days, but if you want to, you can send us something in the mail. But as I said, that phone number and the email address are always monitored, responded to in real time. So please feel free to reach out if you have additional questions. In terms of, next slide, please, Diana, sorry. So just in terms of future engagement, so as part of our review for our final EIS, we were looking at potential mitigation measures for the loss of open space during the construction of the project. And as such, we've been exploring the opportunity or the possibility of using portions of the Hudson River Greenway as an opportunity to provide additional recreation. So it's about 24,000 square feet. And we're looking at the section that runs from Battery Place to Third Place. This is going to be discussed in a bit more detail at tomorrow night's Battery Park City Committee meeting, but we wanted to bring it up here too because we're seeking feedback and ideas from the public about some possibilities or what people would like to see in this space if we were to possibly reprogram it. We also have an online survey which I can provide in the chat in case people want to provide their feedback. Next slide, please. So just an update on our Northwest project. As many know, we sort of kicked this off informally last summer, and we just had our 4th public meeting in September, on September 19th at 6 River Terrace. And basically what we've been trying to do since last year was to basically get people familiar with the progressive design build process, which we've talked about here several times. And this latest meeting that we had on the 19th, we introduced our PDB team. We looked at some alignment alternatives just to get people's feedback on these initial concepts. And that was in advance of taking that feedback and putting it into the draft scope of work for the EIS for this project. Lots of EISs on our end. That draft scope of work publication is actually slated for this week. And we have a public hearing scheduled. The date is incorrect. It's November 16th at Stuyvesant High School, which will be noted shortly. And we'll make sure, we did speak to Lucian about this earlier, we'll make sure the board gets that information. And we have an online registration. It's going to be in person, but there is a virtual component as well. Next slide, please. And just to give a recap of what sort of the participation we had at the last meeting. So we've been doing sort of an online option as well for people who can't attend the meeting. We had a huge amount of attendance. We had over 180 participants at this community engagement meeting, which was great. It was live streamed and also in person. We received over 250 public comments on these alignment alternatives, which has given our team a lot to look through as we develop this draft scope of work. But this feedback that we received on these draft alignment alternatives will also be fed into the 30% design, which is sort of the next step in this process. We certainly, encourage everybody to take a look. The presentation from that meeting is on our website. So is the video from that meeting. We also have a dedicated email address for this project as well, which I'll put in the chat in case anybody wants to reach out and has questions about the project. And as I said, we do have the public scoping hearing coming up in November. So that's another opportunity for people to sort of see what we're looking at for the project and also provide feedback. And yeah, I think that that's all the updates I have for today. I'll hand it back to Jordan. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Claudia. And I will do a quick handoff to Steve Nelson at EDC to talk about the battery project.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Steve Nelson. I'm a project director with New York City EDC. We're working with New York City Parks on the LMCR battery project. Just to give you guys a quick update on where we're at, and I will then pass it over to our construction management team, led by Patrick Prime of Hunter Roberts Construction Group. Just to update everyone, we have hit our 90% design documents. They're being reviewed by various stakeholders and city agencies, and we're addressing comments as well as some regulatory permitting. We've also received our final PDC approval back in September, and as I said, 90% design complete in October. We've also made aware to you guys that with this project, we are taking an approach with the Envision certification program, which talks about sustainability, and we're looking at a lot of reuse of material and more sustainable practices in construction, which is a first for EDC and a good win for this project. We are also onboarding a community liaison that will be attached to Hunter Roberts during construction. We'll bring them on board before construction starts. That way, everyone can meet them and establish good relationships while we're in construction, especially with the community and the community board as well. As of today, you will see actually a sign in a later slide. We installed project information signage in Battery Park through the help of Parks Maintenance and Operations Group. And those signs were developed by our consultants at Stantec. Our upcoming milestones: 100% design documents in November. Our interim Battery Wharf slip repair construction will be starting this week, actually. We've set up a construction fence and a barge has been placed out in front of the wharf for addressing deterioration and operations of slips 1 and 2 for statute cruises. And that construction will be complete in spring of 23. Next slide. As I've stated, this is our project signs for the LMCR battery project. Just some project information for the community and for parks goers. They were installed this morning, and we developed these signs in conjunction with other members in EDC, New York City Parks, and MOCEJ, and the Battery Conservancy. Next slide. I'll actually introduce our construction manager, Patrick Prime from Hunter Roberts, and he can give you guys some overview on the interim slip repairs that we've started through their contractor, JT Cleary. Patrick?
Hi, everyone. Patrick Prime. I'm a project manager with Hunter Roberts Construction Group. As Steve mentioned, we mobilized our contractor, JT Cleary, down to the battery this morning, actually. They have about 6 months worth of pile repair and pile cap repair under the substructure of the existing wharf to restore capacities to the slips 1 and 2 for use by statute cruises while we're doing the overall construction on the first phase of the LMCR project. With the start today, we're looking at about 6 months and spring of 23 completion. Yes, Steve?
Sorry, Diana, can you move the slide?
Oh, yeah, so this is kind of the overview of the areas we're working in. We're set up at slip 2 right now, focusing on getting that slip up and running first, and then we're going to be transferring over to slip 1 to perform the repairs under that slip. Those areas in red are where we have our construction fence set up now. That's going to be for some small material storage over the tunnel section over the battery tunnel, or the bridge section over the battery tunnel, and then just to keep people off the areas where we're demoing the substructure and then replacing in kind. So I think that covers everything on the slip repairs.
Next slide, Diana. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know, Steve, if there's anything else you want to touch on this. I think we pretty much covered what the scope of the repairs are going to be.
Yeah, that's correct. So some of you may see in the next coming days as you're in the park, there's a construction barge that will be doing work, and it's currently at slip 2. Next slide.
Again, like Steve had mentioned, this is the second phase where we'll be over at slip 1 after we've completed the repairs at slip 2 to get that back up to the capacities.
Next slide, Diana. Oh, okay. Back to Jordan.
Excellent. And I will hand immediately off to Andrew at EDC.
Hi, everyone can hear me all right? Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Abend. I'm with the Economic Development Corporation, the Capital Program. I, along with Kathleen Chan and Jennifer Cass, will be the project managers as we progress, getting a consultant on board through the RFP and through the next stages of the Seaport project. So why the Seaport? The Seaport Coastal Resiliency Job, or SPCR, near-term investment to correct one of the most vulnerable and low-lying areas in Lower Manhattan. It could see Shoreline flooded monthly within the next 25 to 30 years due to sea level rise. Additionally, the Seaport shoreline is at a higher elevation than the rest of the neighborhood, creating a bathtub effect, which will, water that comes in, it can't immediately flow out. So this is putting the Seaport at a unique risk. As we have long-term plans throughout Lower Manhattan, this is aligned with the near-term capital project that addresses immediate risks to this area. Diana, next slide. So what is SPCR? It creates a Seaport by addressing sea level rise, drainage risks, improved waterfront access, which includes items as raising the shoreline 3 to 5 feet in the area noted on the slide. It's part of the federal grant application process. It includes potential esplanade improvements, ecological enhancements, and green infrastructure to address the stormwater management, as well as I'm going to mention the Howard Hughes funding that we also received is going to be for esplanade improvements. The design, more specifically and exactly, will be determined once we move further along into the design process and have a consultant on board. Next slide, Diana. So just current status and next steps. We're going to continue to coordinate closely with the community throughout the design process. The fully funded in stages of funding that we have, we already have 170 million in city capital committed to the city, which is going to provide the baseline infrastructure. The additional 50 million through the BRIC grant, the Building Resilient Infrastructure Communities, has been selected by FEMA. We're awaiting the notice of grant award. That was to allow us to expand our scope to include more robust drainage improvements. I just want to stress that of how important that is, because that I believe it's one of 3 projects in America that actually received this grant. So this is of that level. So this is an incredible milestone and great for the project and the neighborhood at large. And additionally, we have 8.8 million from the Howard Hughes Corporation to go towards specifically to waterfront esplanade and public amenities. As we already have that money in a contractual agreement with the corporation, and as we actually begin physical construction in the next few years, that money will be for this project for Esplanade improvement specifically. For engagement and next steps, we still are reviewing the BRIC award review process ongoing with FEMA. It's a relatively new grant, so there are specifics that we still are working specifically with our grants team and FEMA as well to understand the procurement process. We're beginning procurement of the design team, and hopefully we'll have that in the next month or so. The RFP award tentative right now is the first half of 2023. And then, of course, when design work begins, we're going to regularly coordinate with everyone and seek input from the community board and continue to share updates via these meetings. So that's all I had. Toss it back to Jordan.
Excellent. Thanks, Andrew. And now for a very quick update from the FIDI Seaport team and I believe Blake.
Hi, everyone. I'm Blake Monteith. I'm with the Economic Development Corporation, part of our planning team. I'm going to give a short update on the FIDI Seaport Climate Resilience Master Plan. As many of you know, EDC and the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice released the master plan in December of 2021. Since then, we've been working hard to shape and reassemble our project team in order to continue to advance this work to ensure that Lower Manhattan is safe from climate change long term. We are very happy to have Arcadis continuing to work with us over the next 3 years. And with Arcadis, we will be working towards a series of higher level goals by the end of 2025. The first and primary goal of this work is to advance the design of what we call the base infrastructure to a preliminary level of design. So when I say the base infrastructure, that includes all of the elements that are sort of holding up the flood defense system. So that's the shoreline fill, as well as the overwater structures that include our esplanades, our piers, our ferry terminals, etc. All of that will really allow us to begin our environmental review and federal and state permitting applications, which will ultimately allow us to advance the project as quickly as we possibly can. As we're designing that base infrastructure to that higher level of detail, we'll also be updating and refining the full conceptual design of the master plan. That will incorporate a lot of new technical analyses that we're doing to refine many elements of the design, as well as gives us an opportunity to continue to collect stakeholder feedback from the community board, from many other stakeholders in this community and across the city and the region to ensure that this vision continues to meet the evolving needs of this community and this city. We're also really excited to continue to refine our implementation strategy, really looking at in much more detail how we get approvals for the project, especially the extension into the East River, how we fund and finance this project, and then how we phase that construction over time. And then also very excitedly, we're looking at a lot of different ways in which we can expand what are, we think, already great benefits to the city, to the broader city and the region. So we're looking very carefully and at a really comprehensive maritime plan for this waterfront, taking into account a lot of the great feedback we've heard from this community board and many other stakeholders, a stormwater management strategy to ensure that this drainage system is resilient long-term and during those really intense coastal storm events, and a sustainability and energy strategy, really trying to get to a net zero strategy for this climate resilience infrastructure. Now we are planning to kick off a robust series of engagement events this winter, starting by reconvening with the Borough President Levine, the Climate Coalition of Lower Manhattan. We're very happy to continue to have your chair, Tammy Meltzer, along with Liz Yee from the Rockefeller Foundation to co-chair this Climate Coalition. We're also very excited to announce that Sean Donovan will be joining as our third co-chair of the Climate Coalition of Lower Manhattan. And Sean brings a lot of not only deep experience on resiliency in New York City as part of many efforts to protect this area and the region as a whole from climate change in the past, but also a lot of expertise and experience working in and leading agencies in the federal government. So we think he'll be a great advisor for this project. We're also excited to have many members of this committee and of the community board as part of that climate coalition. And following that coalition meeting, we will have multiple other public touch points. We'll be coming back to this committee as well. So really look forward to sharing with you our early findings and early direction on where we think we can go in terms of refining this master plan. Back to you, Jordan.
Perfect. Thanks, Blake. And I will give it to Susan Rosen at New York City Emergency Management.
Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Rosen, Mitigation Operations Program Manager at New York City Emergency Management, and I oversee the Interim Flood Protection Measures Program, or IFPM. Just in case there are some people on the call who might not be familiar, I'm going to give the quick overview. So recognizing that this permanent mitigation efforts that you've been hearing about would take years to design and implement, City Hall approached emergency management and what was then the Mayor's Office of Recovery and Resilience in 2016 and asked us if we could look at a way to buy down the repeated flood risk at critical city facilities and some low-lying neighborhoods, trying to give those sites time to develop and implement the more permanent, longer-term protection. So we use 3 types of interim flood protection measures. On the right, you see flood panel systems, which are typical for protecting something like an electrical room or a boiler room. It's really a hybrid between a pre-deployed post, which is fitted on either side of a door, and then we have just-in-time panels that are slotted into the post. The HESCO barrier on the left is a wire mesh cage with a geotextile fabric lining. We fill it with clean fill material, and those can remain in place for several years, probably 5 to 7, depending on conditions. And we want our designs to include as many of those pre-deployed HESCOs as possible so we can cut down on the amount of just-in-time activity before a storm. Then we use the tiger dams that you see in the middle. Those are sort of giant water-filled tubes to close up most of the gaps that we've left in the HESCOs. Sometimes we use more HESCOs, but we usually use these tiger dams. And so, as I mentioned, we talk about pre-deployed measures. Those are the ones that we can leave in place for several years, and just-in-time measures that we deploy in the few days before a tropical storm or a hurricane to fill in those gaps. Just to mention, over the course of the program, we have operationalized 57 sites, which includes 32 DEP pump stations, where DEP manages the just-in-time deployment, as well as a few sites that have achieved their permanent mitigation and have been able to be retired. So that brings us to some updates on one of our neighborhood sites, South Street Seaport. If you could go to the next slide. Next slide. Okay, thank you. South Street Seaport was operationalized in 2019, and it stretched for almost a mile from Wall Street to Catherine Slip. This past year, we were able to reduce the alignment by about a quarter from Catherine Slip to Robert F. Wagner Place. This was due in large part to the completion of permanent mitigation work at Smith Houses, go NYCHA, and has the tremendous benefit of taking almost all of that part of the IFPM alignment out of the BMCR and BBE construction footprints. So that was a big win for all of us. And next slide. My other updates relate to the feasibility assessments for the South Street Seaport extension and for Tribeca. So in 2019, IFPM agreed to review these 2 areas for IFPM alignments. And in the fall and winter of 2019, we started the process with walkthroughs along with DEP, DOT, MOCEJ, DDC, et cetera, and others, as well as starting to gather all of the necessary GIS data. DEP did a lot of data sharing with us. And then unfortunately, COVID-19 forced us into a pause. So we were finally able to restart the process this past spring and able to complete the steps for all of the flood extent mapping, additional site visits. DEP conducted dye test where the infrastructure wasn't clearly mapped or it was uncertain. There were surveys that were done. We did wave action analysis, and we also reviewed all of the building usage. So the full assessments are just now drawing to a final close for both sites, but we are here to provide you with those conclusions. Next slide, please. This image shows the flood extent that IFPM could be protective against in the blue. So this is the amount of water that might be able to be stopped. This corresponds to a 15-year recurrence interval. So we're not talking about a sandy size storm, we're talking about more than what actually materialized in Isaias. You can see most of the buildings in the area are shaded in purple, and this was to indicate that they were either built after 1984, when current flood-resistant building codes went into effect, or they have a ground floor elevation above the 7.5 feet NAVD 88, which is what our HESCOs would protect for. So that's the amount of the HESCO above the ground elevation. And that left 9 buildings that you see highlighted in yellow that could potentially benefit from the IFPM flood risk reduction. Out of those 9, it's interesting to note that only 1 property has a certificate of occupancy, and that only counted 3 residential units. In addition, in this area, it's really impossible to rule out undermining and water infiltration from groundwater into individual buildings. And it's unfortunately outside the scope of IFPM to analyze or address this kind of flooding potential. Next slide, please. So the findings are the basis for this conclusion that you see here. An extension of the South Street Seaport alignment does not provide enough benefit to warrant further consideration for IFPM. It would provide minimal protection in this area. The addition of this alignment would add another operational period, or it would pull labor resources from other more beneficial alignments. And we also have to consider the strain on traffic and other impacts in this already constricted area. So it's really altogether much greater than the potential benefit. Next slide, please. The findings in the Tribeca area were very similar. Again, the blue on this image indicates the amount of water that IFPM would potentially be able to block. And as at South Street Seaport, this was translating into the same type of storm that we would expect in the 15-year return interval. Here, you can sort of imagine that the topography actually rises significantly just a block or 2 in, although that may not be apparent to the naked eye when you are walking through that area. So we don't get a tremendous amount of flood benefit at this level, a flood protection benefit at this level. Also, as at South Street Seaport, when all of the buildings in this flood extent were analyzed, it was found that only 4 buildings would stand to potentially benefit from IFPM. And again, there's still the possibility of infiltration from groundwater that's still outside the scope of IFPM. Next slide, please. So for basically the same reasons, an IFPM alignment in this area would not provide enough benefit to warrant additional consideration. Again, the number of buildings just doesn't make it justifiable. It would also potentially add about 6,900 linear feet, which would require a tremendous amount of additional time and resources for the just-in-time deployment. And it would also really impact, a major artery during a potential evacuation order. We understand that these are not the conclusions that the community probably wanted to hear, but we do hope that we are presenting these findings in a logical way so that the conclusion is clear. And that's all I have for tonight.
Thanks, Susan. And now to complete the show, handing off to Q at DDC.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My camera's frozen, so unfortunately, I'm going to have to skip the camera for tonight. Apologies for that. Hi, everybody. My name is Q Amiri. I'm with the Department of Design and Construction, the Coastal Resiliency Unit. We have been managing the Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project. I'm sure many of you are aware of that, and also the Brooklyn Bridge Montgomery Coastal Resiliency that we refer to as BMCR. And I'll show you some slides and updates here tonight pretty quickly. Next slide, please. I'll go through a few slides of project overview just as a refresher. We've shown these slides before, and apologies if they're repetitive, but I thought maybe if there are new members in the meeting here tonight, it would be good to reorient folks. And we'll give a quick status update on where we are with the project schedule and construction. Next slide. As I'm sure many of you are aware, BMCR is the northeastern end, the tail end of the Lmcr portfolio. It sort of picks up where the Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project leaves off at Montgomery Street, and it goes down to Brooklyn Bridge, and it's that stretch on the waterfront. Next slide, please. It includes flip-up gates, roller gates, fixed structure, and some community amenities. Many community members have been involved in the design process, and we are at the beginning of our construction phase now. I'll give you more details in a second. Next slide, please. Just as a reminder, the design phase, planning and design phase was carried out by our colleagues at EDC with Jordan and his team at the mayor's office as the supporting agency and partner. And the construction phase was handed off to our agency at DDC, Department of Design and Construction. And we're working very closely with Jordan and the mayor's office of Climate and Environmental Justice, with all of our colleagues at EDC and the design team and the consultants to keep that connected thread and continuity. We just finished the procurement phase. Typically, that's about a 8 to 10 month, 9-month period. And we're just beginning to start the construction phase as of this month. Next slide. So we brought on Jacobs JPI as joint venture as our program management, construction management team, PMCM. They'll be overseeing the construction operations, essentially DDC's right hand for construction, and working very closely with the contractor and all the vendors and subcontractors that will be coming on. We issued our construction notice to proceed was registered just a couple of weeks ago in early October, and we're anticipating issuing the actual notice to proceed to the contractor, who is John Picone, in the next week or two by the end of this month, and that will be their formal green light to get started with the preliminary steps of construction before starting major construction. We're anticipating construction to start this winter, and we're predicting about a 4-year construction timeline. Right now, the contractor has quite a few steps to finalize before they start mobilizing and showing up out on the streets in the community for major construction. That includes getting their staffing plan prepared, finding a field office, ordering materials. There's a host of different plans that has to be prepared and submitted to DDC for review and approval. Part of that plan that package of plans, part of it includes construction schedule. And we'll review that with the contractor and better understand what their proposal is for their construction operations, whether they are anticipating a construction phasing plan or any of the details and which areas are going to be expected to be closed down first, and so on and so forth. So all those details will be coming in the next month or two, and we'll come back with more details as we move along and more information becomes available. Part of the initial steps here also includes coordinating with the agencies, any of the permits that they need to pull, and preparing the site towards the end of this sort of pre-construction phase, if you will. That also includes removing the site furnishings and setting up the fences, determining their staging areas, and like I said, submitting some plans like this erosion and sediment control plans. So right now, all of that will start moving forward and falling into place in the next couple months. And we're not really anticipating major construction probably until the turn of the year in January. We'll come back and be sure to provide more details in the next month or two as we can. That's pretty much it, I think. Next slide is, oh, well, this is the step-by-step process of what's ahead. Essentially, what I just explained, but a little more details of what goes into getting the project, taking the project from the notice of proceed step, which is this month, all the way to major construction. So the next two or 3 months, these boxes keep getting checked off one after another. Like I said, submitting the plans, schedule, and then they go into mobilization. They get their equipment ready. They need to do some test pits, utility surveys, work with the utility companies, Then it goes into site preparation and setting up the fences once the schedule and the construction footprint is determined. Then they go into construction, and we'll be able to provide advance notice, obviously, to the community and all the community boards in this area ahead of time to make sure the construction impacts are communicated well in advance of any major construction. Next slide, please. This is also to show, I got a little shifted around, sorry for the format. Just to show our typical standard DDC outreach process. We keep the elected officials and community boards in the loop very regularly throughout the month, sometimes on a weekly basis. Once construction sort of picks up and starts becoming more intense, everybody will be notified on a more frequent basis. Our public notification process usually includes advisories, whether email lists or on our website. We'll be working on the project website to expand it and make it a little more robust and start uploading materials as we move forward in the next couple months. There will be some social media announcements, emails, flyers, posters posted around the neighborhood. If anybody would like, feel free to email either Jordan or myself. I can provide our email. There's also a contact us section on the website too, that you can reach out and it comes directly to us, and we can add you to the mailing list to keep everybody in the loop. And that continues on for the lifetime of the project during construction. So we'll be sure to provide at least a couple week, if not more, advance notice before any major closures or detours start taking place in that area. One last thing, we haven't selected our CCL, our Construction Community Liaison, just yet. So we'll have a CCL coming on board pretty soon. And I also want to introduce Desiree Gazzo. She's our lead for community engagement for all of our DDC coastal resiliency construction projects. She's overseeing the community engagement and outreach for all three packages of the Esker project, PA1, PA2, and parallel conveyance, and as well as BMCR here. And moving forward, you'll see Desiree's on the phone right now here, but you'll see her joining the presentations and providing updates with her team as we get more into the construction process. Next page, I think, is the link. And yes, this is the link to the website. It needs a little more work for BMCR now that we're moving into construction. Design materials are all up there. EDC and AECOM have done a wonderful job preparing graphics and materials and renderings. Will preserve all of that there. We usually like to keep our project websites as a major resource and a hub for information. So we're not anticipating taking anything down that's there already, but we will be building on it and expanding it to add more sections to be able to communicate the construction progress and updates as we move forward. And that's all I had. We can take some questions during the Q&A.
Great.
Sure.
Thanks, Q. And so I promise our very last slide. I think this is always an important question of when folks can continue to give kind of their feedback. As you'll note, the top three projects, the BMCR, the Battery Park City, the South project are all nearing the end or fully designed, ready, approaching construction. But the kind of three efforts below, the Northwest, Seaport Coastal Resilience, and obviously FIDI Seaport, there will be continuous opportunities for engagement moving forward, highlighting on the Northwest project, their public scoping meeting in November, the design kickoff that we anticipate for the Seaport project in 2023. That's once again a project that's an earlier stage, as well as FIDI Seaport master plan that will really be kicking off that next kind of future phases of that effort in the new year. And so with that, I will open it up to questions and I guess hand it back to Alice.
Thanks very much, Jordan, and to all the participants. appreciate the effort and the time in the presentations. There's certainly a lot of ground here that was covered, and maybe I would argue not covered. I really appreciate you, Jordan, responding to the community board's letter where we asked for a kind of bigger picture, a more holistic understanding of these plans. And I know that everyone is working towards that, and really underlining how all of these different areas and elements interconnect, and quite specifically with a greater graphic kind of component. I'm delighted to hear about the tours. That will be really helpful, I think, to folks as we go forward. I'm going to open it up to the community board members first, and then to the general public. I'm going to ask that everyone limits themselves to a 2-minute rule as we do. And additionally, to please not repeat a sort of question or point once it's been raised. I was going to do this in order of the way these things got presented, but I think it's actually helpful, and I'm sure somebody in the slide world can pull up the slides when needed. Okay, so I'm going to start with the first hand I see, Jeff Galloway from the committee. Thanks, Jeff.
Yes, thank you everybody for the presentation. I thought it was very, very helpful to understand how all of these projects fit together and the design criteria and so forth. I have a very targeted question. Later this evening, we're supposed to be addressing budget priorities for our community as part of our annual work. And, you know, as you discussed and presented, the one big project that has no construction funding is the Seaport FIDI master plan. It was unclear to me from the presentation whether your work is being impeded by the lack of funding, or whether, I mean, obviously there's a considerable amount of design work as well as just trying to figure out the best way to approach that product that needs to be done before you even get into capital funding for the project itself. But to what extent are you being held up from the speed that you would like to be moving forward at by lack of funding? And related question, if we were going to put in a funding request in support of that project, what should we be asking for?
So I think the best way to, let me first hand this to Blake to talk through the financial analysis and kind of funding approach that was done as part of the FIDI Seaport master planning process.
Absolutely. Hi, Jeff. Thank you for your question. So first, I would say that we are moving forward at a great pace on the design of the FIDI Seaport Climate Resilience Master Plan. As I mentioned, what we released last year was a conceptual design of that project. This is a very big, complex project, and it will take a lot of time and a large team of people over a long period of time to fully design it and implement it. But we are happy to have currently a $16 million contract with Arcadis to advance this work. They are working very hard to advance this, and I think we'll have updates on this very soon, as I mentioned, this winter. As part of that work, we will be taking what we identified as, I would say, high-level paths forward in terms of funding and financing the project, and refining that into more specific strategies about specific types of funding sources, whether that's from the city, the state, the federal government, or other sources. And we'll also be identifying how the project would be phased over time. So that means really breaking up the overall waterfront into smaller components and aligning the sequencing and the segments of those phases with our expected sources of funding. So at the moment, we do not have capital funding dedicated to this project. I would say that you know, a community board request for capital funding for the project would, of course, be very well received. But you know, whether we have that funding or not right now, we are still moving forward with the design, and that is design work that needs to be done in order to really make this a capitally eligible project. Jordan, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I guess to put a finer point on a couple of pieces, you know, I think we are all excited. You know, I mentioned the IIJA and the IRA bills where there are some new opportunities. You know, in particular, the BRIC funding that we were awarded in the Seaport area that's likely to receive in the next 4 or 5 years kind of much larger sums than we've seen before. That BRIC program has quadrupled over the last 2 years, but its project cap is $50 million. We were able to get the maximum amount, as Andrew mentioned, one of 3 municipalities or states to receive that maximum amount. But I think that gives you a sense of the scale of some of the opportunities we see on the horizon. And I think, to be clear, there's no silver bullet large federal source, although we certainly think advocacy kind of across all levels of government could be helpful on this issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. Wendy Chapman.
Yeah, thanks everybody. First of all, I think the in-depth explanation about what you're building, design build, and all the different projects. Clearly, you spent a lot of time on that, and this is more a comment for me. I think you're doing it because of all the pushback you've gotten over the last several meetings. That people are coming into it at different stages, but then I think people are questioning whether we need this, in this form, that form, all of these kind of things. So I just wanted to thank you for being what I kind of think was too much. It was a little exhausting, but I wanted to explain to the audience, for anyone who's on this call, why it was so exhausting, at least from my point of view, is that you were trying to answer everyone's question and then some. So thank you. And I will say, I kind of felt that way through the whole presentation, that you're a little explaining a little more than, quite frankly, some of the audience maybe can take. This was a lot tonight. It was over an hour and a half or close to it. But what I wanted to also say is I just got back from Florida. Unfortunately, I was down there for a week. But a lot of the people in Florida were the questioning type, didn't want to pay for it, didn't think they need it, all these kind of things. And now I think everyone's feeling a little differently in Florida. And 2012, Hurricane Sandy was a long time ago for us. And I've been one of those people that I'm so annoyed that we don't have more right now to protect us. So I wanted to ask you again, to the funding, how can we do it so we don't lose a dime of funding that we're eligible for? I think there's timing constraints. I'm going to be saying, let's do it as fast as possible. And I know you're going to value engineer is what they do all the time, whatever the build is, to get this done. But what can we do? Where do you think it's missing? What advocacy can we do in the list? And that was what Jeff was asking. But Build Back Better might, or bricks or whatever, these might have windows that close pretty quickly if the elections go in different directions very soon. Or am I missing the point? So I'm going to stop there.
Thanks, Wendy. A lot of interesting points and fascinating use of the word exhausting. This is my everyday life. You're bored by this? No. No, I think it's a great point. I think we certainly wanted to be responsive, maybe to a fault, and I think we could. You couldn't tell from all the folks on here, take the direction in 13 different ways to that level of detail, and I think we usually try to do kind of a broad overview, and I think we continue to do the kind of the Lmcr core release to kind of touch at the high level on the projects, but wanted to give special attention to a couple areas. I think the financing and funding question is very relevant. Once again, I think there are new opportunities. I think that the kind of key message is the one that I spoke about before. There can be advocacy to the federal government to kind of expand max caps for some of these programs. I think that's something that would be an important message. I think there are kind of other ways in the way we talk about the Lower Manhattan Coastal Resiliency. This is not just a project that benefits Wall Street, right? And I think that may be a perception, and I think this is very much like the efforts of Second Avenue Subway or Gateway. It's truly a kind of a regional effort and has regional implications. And so I think, when you talk to folks about this effort, it's not just, what's directly happening in front of your building. It's something that has far-reaching implications. So I think that's one strategy that I think we will incorporate, planning to incorporate more in our messaging, and certainly something that in your conversations might be helpful.
Thank you very much. And just we should still talk more about signage, but that's a discussion for another day. You guys can still do better.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. And thank you again, Jordan. I think, Wendy, what you might have missed was that we've asked that they respond to the Army Corps. We asked that they respond to the principles that were the foundation of these. So that's precisely why it may have taken a little longer. And I personally thank them for that effort. And thank you all for listening for the extra minutes. Okay, Bob Schneck.
So I suppose following Wendy, I would like to say that I really appreciate all of the detail, even if I might not be able to absorb all of it. But I think it's a responsibility to study these things carefully and really get to know them, because these are major changes. And to the extent that a community board really serves the community, it has to be through its own knowledge and understanding of these things, so we can actually make a difference when we can make a difference. So I appreciate the detail very much, and I wish I could be often in the planning room so I could work with these guys as a personal community representative, which will never happen. But I really think it's important to have a detailed understanding of these things, and we're lucky that we copy these things in the community board so we can see them over and over. So one thing I have been waiting for is the release of hats. And so now we finally have hats, and it's a very phenomenal thing, but it doesn't matter until 2040 or 2050. And as Wendy pointed out, that's a long reach given the power of hurricanes and the possibility of them. And so given that, though, one of the things that's true about the Army Corps of Engineers is there's a lot of good ideas in that. And they really, in choosing 3A, it was really well considered. So is there any difference between, for Lower Manhattan, the vision of what the community of what HATS did and what the city of New York really wants to do? And did they add some approaches or defenses that are better, or some point of view that's better than the New York vision?
Thanks, Bob. Great question. And yes, I think we were eagerly awaiting their report as well. I think I would say that maybe answer the question big picture. I think we will be providing comments, and I believe they have a number of conversations, some virtual starting as soon as next week, and there will be in-person meetings as well. I believe 8 or so across the city later this fall, all leading up to, I believe, January 6th, when they want the kind of all comments in from kind of all of us. And so, I think directionally, the selection of 3A, does seem, there kind of were the kind of larger gate, some challenges with relying on a system like that. And, I think on the other end of the spectrum, kind of an entirely shore-based effort, you kind of aren't able to protect as many communities. It's kind of more challenging, and can likely build over a longer time. So I think we will continue to work with the Army Corps in respect to the Lower Manhattan alignment. I think, once again, because they are doing this across the entire city, the level of detail in Lower Manhattan is nowhere near the effort that we've been embarking with all of you on. And once again, why they included the note that made special reference to our process and with their regulatory team. So I do not believe it includes a drainage analysis. It is kind of a more or less a desktop analysis, and they will continue that work over the next couple of years. They are showing their alignment, to be clear, largely large flood walls on land. It's certainly the belief of the city that is not a kind of feasible option. Once again, we've laid this out over the last couple of years with all of you. Nor certainly in conversations would that be desirable to have such a long, tall structure. You know, they do have deployables in certain areas, but I think the big picture here is this is kind of early days on their analysis. This is their kind of their tentatively scheduled selected plan. So there's more work to be done, and they would be the first to admit that you know, their analysis is completely over the region, while we've had the benefit and resources to kind of drill down with all of you over the last couple of years, and create something that we're very proud of.
So just a follow-on to that is the IFPM protection kind of runs all the way to 34th Street in their plan. And then the report I heard tonight said that it wasn't suggested that the city do anything about that reach.
So just to clarify, what they're showing running up to 34th Street is the not interim flood protection, and maybe there's too many acronyms in this world, but it is the kind of it's the kind of large coastal storm protection that they're showing that runs up to 34th. What we and what Susan presented on was in fact interim flood protection measures, and the conclusion there's limited feasibility for those measures in those areas that we specified. So and once again, those are for much smaller but more frequent coastal storms.
So their plan is for, if it were completed in 2040, 2050, their plan is the permanent plan that would be the preferred defense of that area, for example.
Yes, that is I would say their west side shore-based measure is the currently only contemplated measure for that part of the city.
So a final question is, it seemed like it was said that the NYCHA part was done, and we said yay NYCHA. Is their resiliency done, like the Smith houses over there? Is that what we mean?
So Smith houses has building level, I believe through FEMA installations. These are, you know, and they've also done kind of raising of boilers, kind of a variety of other things, you know, across, including Smith houses across a number of campuses citywide. In addition, and so that is, to your point, that is why the interim flood protections were removed. In addition, the BMCR project, Brooklyn Bridge to Montgomery, will also be kind of a secondary layer for that community. Once again, that is broader than Smith houses and thus the need for it. But it's you know, something we've talked about before. Also, the importance of kind of multiple layers of protection.
Okay, that makes sense. So thank you so much. I was just, as a final thing, curious about the tours. What kind of tours are contemplated, and how do we sign up for them?
I may have jumped the gun a little bit, and I was slightly in jest with Alice in our conversation on Friday, and desire for more walking tours. I know about certainly with the 5-day Seaport project, the Seaport project. We will be having tours. Once again, I'm not sure if all of you enjoy waterfront tours in December. But I think, you know, moving towards the spring, we certainly anticipate scheduling across a number of the projects. As once again, I think it's beneficial for us. It's beneficial for you all, and something that we did a lot more prior to COVID, and anticipate ramping up in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jordan. I just had a question. Could you just describe what the city's thinking is for the Lower West Side of Manhattan in terms of resiliency?
Sure. So, you know, I think this is certainly, you know, a case where we were excited to see some of what was provided through the HAT study. You know, I think, oh, I may have lost some light, so I may have to go and mute and turn my light on in a second. But yes, you know, I think that's something that we, you know, it is something that we were working very closely with. because that is kind of a major opportunity. And I think moving forward, there will be parts of the HAT study that we're very supportive of, others that we question. I think it will be a dialogue. And I think that is really where, over the next couple of months, being able to provide direct feedback to the Corps on things you like, things you don't like, certainly any feedback on the master plan as it compares to some of what they're recommending. I think that's an opportunity. And, I think as it relates to the west side, kind of drilling in there and kind of understanding a little bit more of the kind of elevated flood wall and esplanade and deployable features that they're recommending in that area.
As you well know, we've talked about this for a number of years, the West Side, and with the sort of forecast of I assume you can still hear, the Army Corps starting in 2030, and that's, so I guess 14 years past would be 2044. I guess I won't have to worry because I won't be here, but I'm just really concerned that we don't have a really concrete approach that's at least understood by some of us as to how we're going to go forward in protecting the west side of Lower Manhattan. And I appreciate the understanding that the Army Corps is always that grayed out area that's pointed to, and now we see some sort of plan, which is quite schematic, of course. It would be great if we could entertain a discussion, in the not too distant future with the powers that be, and that would include the Army Corps, you all, the city, and also the state. We've talked a lot about DOT and where they could be in terms of the idea of the Route 9A and all of those conversations that happened during rebuild. I think the time is, if we could forecast or look forward to a conversation with those entities on behalf of our community, I think it would be really useful. And so I'm just throwing that out there for an invitation that could happen, Jordan. I think it would be really worthwhile. I see a nod, yes, so I'm encouraged. I also would ask that Susan, thanks very much for your presentation. I have to say there was a lot to unpack there, mostly to learn that there's absolutely no possibility of interim measures along the entire west side of Manhattan is hard to digest on many levels, but it would be probably very helpful if you would be willing to come back and give us a slightly slower and more in-depth presentation and see if we could just sort of better understand that in the context of those needs.
Of course.
Thanks very much. Lastly, I guess I don't see any other members of our board with a hand raised, so I will move on to members of our community, and I see Brittany Eretz. Go ahead, Brittany. Lucian, are you able to unmute Brittany, or can she unmute herself? Oh, there we go.
Hello?
We can hear you, thanks.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm right in the midst of bedtime right now, alone with my kids. So I might get interrupted, but I want to say I really appreciate this thorough presentation. I know Wendy called it exhausting. I think it is the exact type of details and information that the community does need on all these projects. I didn't find it overwhelming at all. I actually found it helpful to actually know and have it explained of what all the assumptions are that go into this and the thoughtfulness that goes into it. I think it's really important. I would echo, Alice, what you say about trying to figure out how to do it further up the west side, as well as what Bob said about the Seaport. I think that area is a really big risk area and should be prioritized. So it is concerning that, some of these projects don't really have a plan or aren't funded. I am hopeful about the HATS project. I do think 3A is probably, deserves to be looked at in a little more depth. The one comment I do have, obviously, is on the Wagner Park project. And again, that the design principles and the design of building a bigger pavilion and a structure as a mechanism to control flooding to me doesn't make sense. There seems like simpler options like that were adopted in Rockefeller that look like that they're probably going to be adopted in the Battery by building just kind of a bigger wall and letting parks flood. And just to state clearly, the Battery Park City Neighborhood Association's position is that we all support resiliency. We just think there's a better design than what the design is proposed. I find it concerning that the biggest risk point in front of Pier A is the last to be addressed in this project. And that was where the water did come over for Sandy. So I would think that that should be actually first and foremost. And then, you know, just to be, again, very, very, very clear, because I think, you know, I've heard rumors about that, you know, people are climate deniers and don't believe that. That is absolutely 100% not the case. The question is about the design and the design principles that are being applied, and that there's a better alternative. Our association has been working in partnership with other members of the community and have an alternate design team for Wagner Park, and they will be finalizing their plans tomorrow. And we will be rolling out to the community for feedback sometime next week, working around Diwali, as well as the debate that's happening. So stay tuned on more information on that front. And then lastly is a question. And the question is really, I loved the information and the description. It was so helpful. Again, I can't reiterate I do really thank you guys for being very thoughtful and providing all the information. My question that still is outstanding is, how does this work with flooding from the sky under Hurricane Ida scenarios, all these different projects? Because we do expect more cloudburst weather patterns, and I'm still not clear how all these projects will address that. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Brittany. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I think there's a lot there. I think the piece that I'll address is related to extreme rain. You do bring up a kind of a very pertinent point, and you know, one that you know, after Ida, a number of cloudburst events this summer have, you know, made clear that, you know, moving forward, this is you know, certainly a large part of our climate portfolio. It's not just coastal surge, it's sea level rise, it's extreme rain, and it will be heat. Heat is you know, the deadliest of our climate risks. So as part of the master planning effort, one of the conclusions was that a new pump station is needed for Lower Manhattan. There were a couple of different locations explored, as well as, and hopefully this isn't too wonky, but they're kind of looking at kind of multi-hazard, you know, being able to address for those extreme events and for precipitation events as well. So that is something that is being looked at as part of the master planning effort, and its ability to help mitigate some of those concerns from extreme rain. Certainly other kind of bioswales and green infrastructure that the city has rolled out over the last couple of decades. You know, the challenges, this is not necessarily my field of expertise, but, you know, relates to the kind of groundwater table and where those green infrastructure makes sense and where it doesn't. Lower Manhattan isn't necessarily the best location, is my understanding why it hasn't been rolled out. I imagine others can kind of give a better answer to that. But so I think there's the short answer is that, you know, I think there are short-term solutions as well as this long-term approach, looking at a pump station as part of the master plan.
I can add a little bit of color to that, Jordan. I just want to be clear that the battery project, and I'm sure all of these projects, will comply with the new DEP stormwater requirements, which, you know, do require infiltration on sites, even on the waterfront. So they don't necessarily address flooding, but it's meant to improve water quality and definitely promote infiltration, even at the shoreline. and not just create all hard surfaces.
Jordan, can you just tell us where the pump station is? Is it yet identified in a plan, in sort of a general location, or not yet?
The two locations that were identified in the master plan were the Coast Guard site, and as part of the extension north of the Battery Maritime building, I believe there were a couple variations around there, but once again, this would be on kind of new extended land in that area. And so this is work that we're embarking with DEP over the next couple of years to better understand viability of those locations and sizing and ability to function in different storm events.
And when will the community be able to look at that again? I know that there was those earlier plans, many months ago, and you mentioned the winter, I guess. When do we start to look at that? I mean, understanding that obviously it's not designed, but where we get to participate in the designing.
I believe Blake is still with us, but yeah, I would say a little bit in early 2023. Is that right, Blake?
Yeah, I would say late this year, early next year, we can start coming to you with some of the more advanced site planning considerations we're thinking about for those options, as well as some early refinements and inputs to the maritime strategy and the energy and sustainability strategy.
Look forward to it. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
I see community board host with a hand raised. I'm not sure who that is, but whoever it is.
Yep, this is Lucian here. Hi, everyone. I had a follow-up question about the extreme rain events and the infiltration areas that are built into the waterfront redesigns. I just want to put on the record here that Community Board 1 in the past couple of years has requested from DEP to include additional areas for rainfall capture within our district. We know that our district is very hardscaped, certainly as a large percentage of its overall area. However, we do think that there are opportunities for rainwater capture throughout the district, especially where there's excessive hardscape outside of where we generally believe there to be underground infrastructure. We would very much like to pursue that. I know that per the borough budget consultations, DEP has stated that they don't have the same level of combined sewage overflow concern for Manhattan as they do for Queens and Brooklyn. However, being that there is an additional potential to reduce the impact of an extreme rain event, not solely in the waterfront greenery areas, but also in the interior of our district, to reduce the amount of precipitation that makes it to the storm sewer. We would like to probably reiterate that call for your office to work with DEP in identifying additional areas of stormwater capture, since we'll be talking about that also in our budget priorities tonight. So just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucian. Okay, Carrie Parker Davidson, I want to welcome Carrie. She's a new Community Board 1 public member, and we are really lucky to have her. Although I see your hand maybe is not sure what that means. Carrie, can you be heard?
I'm here. I'm not sure what you're. Hi, thank you for that introduction, Alice. So I have a question. I think her name is Ronnie. The flood elevation calculation, I missed the part about the wave interaction and what the height. I know it varies in various places, but you gave a range for other elements. I wonder if there's a range for the storm, for the wave and overtopping, and if there's a height range that you're looking at.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it does vary based on local wave conditions, where the flood protection is located, and then also based on that structure. Is it a levee? Is it a vertical wall? But I will say that as I am a part of the FIDI Seaport Master Plan team, it accounts for about 6 feet of the height in the design flood elevation for the master plan. So we're talking about, 25% of that height being driven by waves. In some locations, it's even higher. It's just 6 feet on average. So it is a really big part of what ultimately drives that design flood elevation. I don't know if Jordan or others have a sense as to how much waves contribute to design flood elevations as part of other projects, but I can say for the master plan, it is substantial.
And then to follow on that, when I looked at your diagram for the wave interactions, the blue and the light blue and the dark blue, what happens when you build out into the river on the east side, right? You get like a Venturi effect that happens through there, right? So now the wave action, it's a narrower channel. So does that, like, how are you, how does that fit in? And, have you modeled that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I see Blake went on video. Blake, do you want me to take this or would you like to step in?
No, you've got it covered.
Okay. So Carrie, what we look at is hydrodynamics in the East River to understand those potential impacts. And we look at it for two conditions. The first is daily tidal velocities. The last thing we would want to do is negatively impact navigation in an area that has so many maritime uses. We wouldn't want to increase scour on historic bridges. So we run hydrodynamic models to ensure that the impacts to the daily tidal velocities is quite localized and negligible. So very small in increases or decreases across the study area. We then also look at the impacts of a shoreline extension during a coastal storm event. So in this instance, we took Hurricane Sandy and looked to see what happened. And given how broad and vast the New York Harbor is, as well as the width of the shoreline extension that is being contemplated for the master plan, there is no negative impacts on neighboring areas as a result of the shoreline extension. You can think of it as still a pebble in a big jar of stones, just given how large the New York Harbor is, its connection to the Atlantic Ocean, and just generally how the water body performs. I would make a plug that at FIDISeaportClimate.nyc, which is the master plan's website, we have nearly 1,000 pages of appendices. Thankfully, there's one on hydrodynamics, so you do not need to go searching for it. But you can read more about all of the different scenarios, the models that we used, the assumptions that are in those models, and get additional level of detail. The last thing that I will say on that point is that it is actually a requirement of FEMA that a flood protection project cannot negatively impact flooding in another area. So all of these projects have to demonstrate that they are not causing flooding, whether it's to the area next door, whether it's to the area across the river, but that the impacts are negligible in terms of what is being proposed to provide flood protection.
Thank you so much. That is, your presentations tonight and your answer to that question are so informative and insightful and succinct, and I appreciate it. I don't know if I have the temerity to get through 1,000 pages of additional, I did try and get through all of HATS. So my other question is really related to HATS, and it sounds like there's no vision yet determined for the west side. The 22-foot design elevation flood walls that the HATS project puts all up the west side. They included an elevated, like a promenade piece that was very short near Stuyvesant. And I wondered whether there's been communication between the Battery Park City Resiliency Northwest and HATS, and where these different design choices might have come from between the two.
Could I answer that, Alice?
Of course, Gwen, welcome. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gwen Dawson. I'm the Vice President of Real Property for the Battery Park City Authority. And the area around Stuyvesant is part of the Northwest Battery Park City Resiliency Project, that North Esplanade, and then the area that the alignment that would go across West Street, Route 9A into Tribeca. Part of what we're going to be looking at with respect to the comments that we would submit on this plan, the HATS report, is not really understanding exactly what they're representing or reflecting with respect to the elevated esplanade there. That is, there are possibilities that exist with respect to the North Esplanade behind Stuyvesant that have not been settled upon yet. And then as any kind of flood protection moves northward along Route 9A beyond our project area, we are not involved and have not been involved in determining what the solution in those areas should be. So right now we're focused on that area that's right in that corner behind Stuyvesant as close to the endpoint of our project.
And I've been following your project and your presentations over the last several months as well. And sorry, Alice, you cut me off if I'm asking too much. Your project that goes across, I think, at Harrison Street and then goes up to Northmore and sort of does flood protection along the BMCC side. Is there a reason why the HATS project is not using 9A, the median space, or is there something that this group has already analyzed that would help me understand why the median in 9A isn't the alignment point going along the west side?
I would say that for the Northwest project, we have been asked to look at utilization of the median as part of the alignment, and I believe that our team is investigating that again for the extent of our project. I can't speak for the area north of our project.
Carrie, somebody else can answer this, but the combined sewer overflow flows through the median.
Yeah, I was going to say the speculation, but there are utilities there, and I know that in kind of previous analysis, there's significant. There's the interceptor sewer, I believe that runs through there. So I assume that's the issue. But once again, I know that there's previously been a request for the Army Corps to present their plans. I know that there's kind of broader public meetings. I believe the community board could certainly request them to provide additional detail, and I think that's probably the best way to get the most accurate answers on something like this.
Yeah, I think, as I said earlier, we're going to try to focus with you, Jordan, and Battery Park City folk and the state DOT and the Army Corps on this portion that is being raised here by Carrie in terms of that median, and really putting to bed this constant question with a lack of very specific, concrete answer as to why that median can't be used, or if some portion of it can be used. So it's a fair thing to pursue, and I think we should be able to do that soon, I hope.
Just one last thing.
Okay, that's going to be the last one.
Yeah, is the HATS report says that we need to redo all of the drainage on the west side anyway, because we have insufficient amount of drainage expected for the flooding. So it sounds like that, anyway, so I'll just leave it there. Thank you all for listening.
Thanks very much, Carrie. I have a question in from Rosa Chang. I'm just going to try to read it here. Sorry. There's some major concerns about the enormously high and long wall that BMCR plans to build in front of the NYCHA Smith houses. It would separate Smith from the future park with a block long 10-foot tall wall. Would like to better understand if that's a crucial part of the design? And is there some way not to separate the area from the possibility of a future community park?
And Alice, you should say the park in the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yes, thank you.
Jordan, do you want me to take this one?
Sure, yeah, why don't you do first pass?
Hi everyone, Steve Nelson from EDC again. I know that I've introduced myself as the project manager for the Lmcr battery, but EDC has done the design management for BMCR as well. I was one of the project managers on that as well. We worked closely with DDC and Q's team. In front of the houses there, it is not one singular wall. I just want to clarify that, you know, we've designed BMCR to being open to the public and open to visual waterfront corridors. So there is no separation from the community and the waterfront access and esplanade. You know, those are deployable gates that sit actually in an elevated sill, which is 2 feet high, that is integrated into the esplanade as public amenities. There's seating, other play equipment that was designed for that project. And we worked extensively to make sure that there is no cutoff of the community to the waterfront for that project.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but are we also talking about the battery? The Brooklyn Bridge Park that Rosa Chang is champion? That I know it's not on the books right now. It's not a reality. It's something that's just being proposed, and a lot of elected officials have a lot of interest in it. So it's not something that is planned right now. I think that's what the question that Rosa was talking about.
Steve, I think the question is about the DOT underpass, or sorry, the DOT yard area and the tieback, that specific area.
Okay. Well, I mean, that we've also designed with, we do cross South Street with a deployable gate that's embedded in South Street. Again, that is only deployed in terms of flood events. You know, there is a wall that goes up along the Brooklyn Bridge, but it really abuts the bridge, and there is no cutoff from the community. There's an interceptor gate at the corner of Robert Wagner and South Street, but again, it's a small building.
I'll just add that because we are tying back into the floodplain, that while it may start out taller, it gradually moves down, and by the time it kind of hits the floodplain, it's only a couple of feet. So it is, yeah, certainly not a 10-foot kind of uniform across the area.
Well, I guess it's something that, you know, is definitely wants to be looked at, particularly that interceptor gate. I mean, it isn't something I'm specifically very familiar with, but I've being sent some images, and I guess we'll have to have further discussion, but I think it's a great concern, particularly given the energy about the Brooklyn Manhattan Bridge Park. That is Manhattan Brooklyn Bridge Park. That is something that this community is really pushing for. So perhaps we can have more discussion on that at the Waterfront and Parks Committee. Are there any other folks that have? Oh, I see someone, Nancy Vigiano. I think that's the last. Nancy?
You know.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My question was about the Con Ed plant up on 14th Street. During Sandy, we lost electricity, and Southbridge lost heat in addition, since we get the heat from Con Ed. And I wondered if this plan considered their vulnerable, I can't say it, how fragile.
Vulnerability.
Thank you.
I barely got through it myself. Absolutely. We are a close partner with Con Ed. I know that since Sandy, they've invested over $1 billion in hardening their infrastructure, and that's exactly what they did to that facility. You know, if you go there, I've done a couple tours. They have deployable features, kind of other hardening measures. And so once again, to the question of, are we safer from a Sandy-like storm? I think that we can clearly point to that. They also embarked on a segmentation of their grid to avoid the kind of full-scale below 14th blackout. They're able to better manage the grid in Lower Manhattan so that kind of any blackouts could be more localized in nature rather than disrupting everything south of 14th.
Thank you.
All right, I think we've done it. We've heard from everybody. I think we got everybody's original questions in. So I want to thank all the presentations and people that were here tonight. What an incredible group. We'll look forward to other updates and more detailed ones to come. For those of you who have the time and inclination, please stick around for the discussion on resiliency and talking about principles that we might want to consider going forward to have sort of documented as a resolution for this community board. But in the meantime, I let those who are not going to be participating or interested in that discussion to go. But really, thanks so much to Jordan and to all the folks that are here tonight. Really, really appreciate your time. It's tremendously helpful and really informative.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. So moving on to the second item on our agenda, which is to talk about, seems like good timing, to talk about coastal resiliency principles. And I really appreciate Jordan was able to share some of those in that slide, which I actually think I was able to take a screenshot of. But in any case, I think it's a great opportunity to consider, and I don't know if you all of you guys who were on the committee who received the link to the city's goals and guiding principles that they themselves wrote in 2021. But it seems like a good place to start. And I don't know if that's something, although I guess the first question is, from a show of hands, who did not read this or is not really familiar with some of these principles? Okay, great. I don't see any.
I was going to say, I'll admit to skimming more than reading in depth, but I did skim it.
Okay, that's not like it wasn't a terribly, committed homework assignment. But in any case,
Yeah.
I asked Lucian to pull this up for us, maybe on the screen, so we could just look over the city principles. It seems like a good place to start. And the idea is basically that in generations that follow ours, and for us also, that we have something that's kind of a document that we can go to kind of consider what it is that we're really looking for as we try to define our new coastal world downtown. And are there principles we really want to see followed that are very much specific, or maybe not just to Lower Manhattan, but to the areas that you all know personally, to the areas that you think represent the communities, to matters of management, of ways to go about this best. And so it's not something we're going to obviously complete tonight as a resolution, but I'd like very much to have a kind of working document that we might be able to present to the board at some point in the not too distant future. So that's kind of the idea. And thanks, Lucian, for pulling this up. So there was a section in this, which I thought was pretty good, called Goals and Guiding Principles. And let's just go through them. And I guess I would just say, are there things that you want to add to this that you think it should be edited in some way that don't address our community specifically, and the like? So, and I think, Lucian, you'll be good enough to take notes on this. And ultimately, maybe if we could come up between 1 and no more than 20 of these principles, that might be a good goal. Less is more. That could be helpful to people after us who are going to be looking at resiliency, it sounds like, for the next 60 odd years. And, what do we really want to see, and how do we want to see it being implemented? So, okay, let's go for there were 16 principles. So I think it's the next page. I think we're just going to go to the guiding principle portion of the document, which I think just a little further back. So the first one, I'll just read them out so everyone can be aware in case you're not seeing the screen. Okay, so
Yeah,
so the first
the table of contents actually states them all without much elaboration, so it might be easier.
Okay, well, I don't know whether elaboration was going to be.
Well, I mean, we may want to do
some.
some elaboration, but
Yeah, I
they're
just
all
think.
kind of in one place there on this table of contents.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I just thought maybe we'd want to see it just for those folks who didn't read it. But I'm gonna, if you don't mind, Jeff, I think we're gonna go back to that idea just because we can read through what some of the
That's
thoughts
fine.
are.
That's fine.
Yeah. So Lucian, it's page 11. Let's start on page 11. And for those folks, it's guiding principle 1, center equity throughout the project. And certainly, I don't think there's a lot of argument there, but if you could just read through the first paragraph, I think we'll do a skipping here. So an equity framework should guide every phase of all neighborhood coastal flood protection projects to prioritize those approaches that address the disproportionate impacts of climate change. A coastal protection project guided by an equity framework acknowledges disproportionate climate and environmental hazards faced by communities already made vulnerable by existing social, economic, and health inequalities, who are often excluded from adaptation planning and denied the benefits from adaptation resources. I'm sure that's our community, but certainly an important principle. Guiding principle. And are there any comments? I'm not sure how, if you have something to say, just raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll just go through these and then, maybe comment on all of them. To guiding principle 2, to conduct neighborhood-based planning and analysis. Guiding principle 3, to consult, engage, and communicate and partner with the public. I'm not going to read ones that are clearly pretty obvious. Guiding principle 4, to maximize community benefits. And so a project should aim, that seemed a little unclear, but a project should aim to provide additional community benefits beyond reducing coastal flood risks. And I think that's a really critical point. Projects should not become barriers that block residents off from the waterfront, which was Rosa Chang's point in her comment, but rather should strive to enhance the public realm by creating a well-designed and universally accessible waterfront and to maintain and invest in working industrial, recreational, and commercial waterfronts. So that's an example where, if that were something we were, just have those principles down as we're looking at, for example, the Northwest Battery plans or the Seaport plans, that should be something that's highlighted, that everybody should be recognizing as where are the community benefits in this particular resiliency plan. And I think that's something that we often don't do enough of. Guiding principle 5, apply the latest climate science. Critical, and I was really appreciative to see Jordan go over that. I'm sorry, Arcadis representative to go over that tonight a little bit. I think that's, the more of that the better. So I think that's a very important guiding principle that, again, we don't have a tremendous amount of, we haven't in the last few years. Guiding principle 6, well, reduce coastal flood risk. Seems like a very important one. Guiding principle 7, to mitigate drainage impacts. Another one that we don't talk about enough and see enough of, but we're beginning to touch upon more. Guiding principle 8, ensure flood hazards and other environmental burdens are not shifted to other neighborhoods. Very important. Guiding principle 9, maximize resiliency benefits. Sorry. Guiding principle 10, to maximize environmental benefits. Guiding principle 11, design a closed system that functions independently. And that we see a lot of, and that discussion as to how each one of these independent systems then works cohesively as a whole is really critical. And I probably would add that if we have a guiding principle of this nature. Guiding principle 12, align with a broader city policy and broad project goals. And that would, of course, be not just city, but federal and state at this point. Guiding Principle 13 to improve neighborhood quality of life and urban design, which is really a critical component we again don't often discuss. Guiding Principle 14 to prioritize natural and nature-based features where feasible. This we hear a lot about. We've certainly discussed this a lot with wedge design, the waterfront edge design guidelines that we are attempting to see followed at the Battery Park City Authority's plans right now. That's something that often comes up, which again should be a principle that we see followed. Guiding Principle 15 to maximize passive infrastructure features and components. So the sort of coastal flood protections that are fixed in place and not ones that have to be moved into place and the like. And then lastly, Guiding Principle 16 to minimize operations and maintenance needs. So what was interesting to me was I didn't know this existed, I have to be honest, until I was talking to Jordan about this discussion we were going to have. And, or if I did, I hadn't read them in a long time. And I think they're actually really good. According to Jordan, they're going to be updated. These were from December of 2021. But it seems like a really encouraging start for us to consider. So that's where we're at. I don't know if anyone have any comments or thoughts, things they'd like to add, edit, subtract, no interest, whatever. Any comments that folks want to add? I see Tammy. Oh, I see Wendy. Okay. All right. Why don't we start with Wendy? Go ahead.
So I think this is great too. Thank you, Alice, for actually skimming over it with the group. I appreciate that. One of the things that I remember, when we were talking about the massive amount of criticism that we gave to the original project and the original pavilion idea for the Battery, Park, Wagner Park, is that we started saying, the subways, the things that are commonly used. I actually think that that's that should be right up at the top, in terms of the infrastructure of the city is the most important thing. If people can't get around our city's paralyzed. And I don't think this spells it out. It's in there, but to me, I look at the HAT study that the way they did their analysis. Remember what they said in terms of the cost benefit analysis that they run through to make sure that the cost of the project doesn't exceed the cost of what it's protecting. Remember, they did all of that. We talked about that probably 5 years ago. I think in terms of where you start and what's at the top, which actually started making sense, and it was stuff that we were advocating for, and why the Wagner Park project changed over time so radically, is that we were saying, listen, West Street is flooded, the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel is flooded, the subways, situation. And this doesn't read starting with that. To me, it's like, what do we all use? I mean, it is in there, but you know what I'm saying? I think we need to spell it out. Protecting the roads, protecting the subways, protecting the ways to flee the city if we must. If the hurricane that just hit Florida, which it's a little on my mind because I was just there, how do those people, many of them didn't get out. And that's what I think about with, this is a massive storm event. We can't even imagine the storms that are going to come in the future. How do we help people get out? And I would like to have that be the first principle of this. And then obviously sea level rise and equity and all those things need to be included. But to me, it's a storm is hitting, and it's a massive storm that we've never even imagined how big it's going to be. So anyway, that's enough of that. I'm a little dramatic. Sorry.
No, I just got back from Florida also. No, I think that's a really excellent point. Thanks very much, Wendy. I don't know if Lucian's jotting these things down also, but I am as well. So we will have, I'm going to compile everything, and then we'll obviously review it at the next meeting perhaps. Okay, Jeff.
Yeah, I was going to echo that your earlier comment, Alice, that this is a good framework to start from, and I think it's something that we should keep in mind as we are going through the evaluation of what's coming up ahead of us, that to the extent that we have, I think, thinking of these goals ourselves, as well as the one that Wendy just mentioned, that I think maybe is kind of subsumed within principles 9 and 10, but it's not very specific within there. And I think that is the protection of infrastructure, of the functioning of the city is obviously critically important. But just aside from what the principles are, I think it's good to have these in mind as we are evaluating and as we are critiquing options. That's all I had to say.
Well, it's an interesting point, because before, when I thought of the idea of, just, considering that as a committee we should consider principles, I didn't realize this document existed. And part of me wonders, is this sufficient? Do we just rely on the city's published?
It's a pretty good set of things. That's not to say that we couldn't improve it or slightly, but I think I agree with all these priorities. That some of them are more important to me than others, but I think it's a pretty good framework.
Well, I guess we could tweak it or refer to it, and then let's see how, other things that are coming up and hear from other folks. But yeah, I'm pleased it's a place to start. Okay, thanks, Jeff. Andrew Selcher.
Thanks, Alice.
Welcome. Thank you.
As it relates to the principle around community engagement, I'm wondering if there's any language we feel we might want to add to make that a bit more specific, because it often seems we're at odds with these agencies as to what is true community engagement.
Yeah, great idea. Well, if you have any ideas and you want to send them along, go ahead and send them to me and Wendy and Lucian, and we'll add it in, or for consideration if you want. That would be great.
I'll take a look at the document. I don't have it right in front of me, and I'll perhaps propose something.
Thanks a lot. Bob Schneck.
Okay. What I wanted to say is that since Jordan said the agencies were revising this, I think what we can do is we can provide them with some input on specific matters we think are special or worthy of focusing on. I think that I'm in very strong agreement that they have written a kind of quality declaration of independence, and for me to diddle with in some fundamental way editing it isn't, I don't know that I could be so helpful. But I do think that if you once you found that and provided that much focus, I think that we can actually in some of those items actually make expansions and specificities that are useful for us and that are useful for everyone, or that are almost universals, because we do have a lot of experience. And so I think that for myself, I would like to take a much more careful read of what you found, and then see whether or not I myself could make any additions to that, or any specificities that I think matter to our community or other communities. But I think that it's a really good place to start. One element of reality, since Wendy raised that kind of point about infrastructure, I think has to do with something I'm often concerned about with resiliency, which is the matter of urgency. How do we even, I watch this thing in Florida and I go, wow, wow. What happens if, these things bear, have a different compass bearing and come to visit us or anywhere else? And so it's a real risk reacting to it, having some sense in which, how does a community react to that in real time and give structure to real time? So, for example, I love the Army Corps of Engineers and I really respect all those guys, but starting in 35 and ending in 50 isn't going to do as much good if something happens in 26. So I think how we handle urgency and how we structure that is important. And also, I think that since we're taxpayers, having some sense of the gravity of the cost of these things, and where it comes from, and how can we teach the community about governmental economics and big project economics so that we can meaningfully understand, kind of project balance sheets, as you will, when we look at them as a group rather than as a specialty. So those are kinds of ideas that right off the top of my head I could add. But having access to this is something to look at and read would be very helpful to me and maybe helpful to others.
Well, great. We'll look forward to more comments on it when you have a chance, Bob, when you dive into it. Thanks very much. I've noted the comments you made, which I think are really helpful. Yep. Sarah.
Hi.
Sarah Cassell, hi.
It's interesting. I agree with Bob about the urgency. The fact that very little has been actually concretely done since Sandy is appalling to me personally. Having evacuated twice from my home in Battery Park City, I am in full agreement with Wendy that infrastructure, subways need to be protected, just the way we're protecting, buildings and neighborhoods. If you look at the subways and the way they're constructed, flooding a street, you're flooding a subway tunnel. There's a lot to think about here, and I don't think that has been considered at any point. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. Great points. All right, Tammy, our chair is here. Hey, Tammy.
Hey, Alice. Thanks, everybody. You know that lots of the things you said have touched on some of the long conversations we've had on this board. Public engagement, gosh, I can't wait to see what you say, Andrew, because the public engagement is sort of, to me, the same topic in this guidelines as public benefit issues, because we have heard time and time again when we were discussing the Lmcr project. Oops, I forgot my camera, sorry. When we were making comments and suggestions that for public benefit and for climate change and to help pollution and everything else, we needed to find a way to incorporate last mile delivery into the new plans that they were making for resiliency. We were told time and time again that those options were not possible because it had to be resiliency only, which seems to be strikingly against the conversations that are in these design guidelines. So public benefit needs to be an expansive thing that looks at options that are climate change driven, things to improve and reduce the loads. If what we're talking about is, all we're talking about is keeping the water out, that's one thing. But if you're not talking about the reasons that we have warming seas and rising waters, then you're not actually doing anything but just putting up a wall an intellectual wall on it. So I really believe that we need to include climate change as a discussion and how that benefits, how that drips down through public benefits has to be more than grass and a tree. We really do need to take a look. We are built centuries ago. And if we want to look at centuries going forward, we have to really think about what it would look like in 100 years, in 150 years. What are the problems we have today that we didn't think about then? No one thought when we went from horses to cars in New York City where we would be. We have a historic street grid. We have an opportunity to turn our streets back into something that is more pedestrian, more human scale and friendly. But if we're just not going to do that by utilizing the new infrastructure opportunities that they're providing, then it's a missed opportunity. That in more detail about what public engagement is and what that engagement is, not a dialogue out, but it is a constant touch base back to the community, because what they think they heard and what the community said may not be the same thing.
Well, it would be really helpful, Tammy and everybody else, if you would just jot what you think would be, you'd want included as a, line in the resiliency guidelines, and then we'll compile it all so that we don't miss anything. Some of these are really interesting topics, but probably could use a little definition. So that would be really helpful. You can copy it to me and to Lucian and Wendy. Okay. Brittany Eretz from the attendees. Hi, again.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, thanks.
Hi. And this time I'm a little less stressed because my kids are not melting down right as I'm speaking, but I appreciate you calling on me again. Before I just give a quick comment, I do want to commend Tammy, you and Alice, and everyone involved in the letter and bringing everyone together to give this very thorough explanation. So I was rapidly trying to get my comment out, but I think that that's really, really important. I think that the community I think it's a really value add for the community and has been really thirsty for that type of information. So thank you for the community board's leadership on that. It's really greatly appreciated. The one comment I want to make, I do love the idea of these design principles, and I think that this is a really, really important topic because as every project goes through, it is helpful to compare it back to the design principles and within, understanding the community's prioritization of the design principles and help with that dialogue. I think Tammy, it was you that said it's really important to not just speak out, here's what we're doing, take the feedback and recap it and say, okay, and here's how it's been integrated, right, into the next phase. And if it can't be, here's a really detailed explanation of why with different pros and con options. I just wanted to also just note that there is that Green Coalition document of design principles that about 20 different organizations have signed on. They're very simple principles, but I can share that if that's helpful for the board to look at that as well.
Thanks, Brittany. I was looking for that yesterday, and I couldn't pull it up. So I really would appreciate it if you'd send it. It was terrific. Yeah, I remember it, and it was great. It's very germane. Thanks, and I'll share it with everybody.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll share it. Thank you again. I'm really appreciative of you guys spending the time and talking through this. So
thanks very much for your input. Okay, Bob, I see your hand up again.
Yeah, I just wanted to make two additional suggestions. One is I'll call sufficiency of protection, and by that I mean what is actually the goal of a project, and when do we know we have enough protection or not enough? And so, for example, I was very impressed that we completely reconstructed the number 1 train arrival area, and then it flooded and we completely reconstructed it again, and each time it took 3 to 5 years to get it done. And so I think that when as kind of like a general wandering around the defenses, when I look at the subway defenses, I go, well, I don't know. I don't know. I think that going back to some of the things that have been done and taking a look at them and asking the question, is this, in the opinion of the community or people responsible for the community, is this the protection we think is going to work? Because I watched some of those installations over the grates, and even while they were testing them, they didn't work. But you know how grimy things get here. After 5 years, what's going to happen when they press a button and it's supposed to run? Not much. So I'm very concerned that even some of the things we've done already might not work, and having a sense of revisiting them and making sure they're right. Another eternal problem related to that is the combination of storm and sewer kind of flows together. And I think that, poses all kinds of problems. So that's one kind of idea, this efficiency idea. The other concept I want to introduce is the concept of vision. And by the concept of vision, I mean, what's New York supposed to look like in 25 to 50 years? Do we really want a pedestrian city? Are we really going to have electric vehicles? Are we really going to figure out how to shuttle people across town in some way that's efficient without digging holes in the ground that take, 25, 30 years of project and cost billions of dollars? Driving invention and figuring out what we really want here and actually building, for example, into these things as we build them, for example, charging infrastructure for EVs, and also having rules for small cars and where to put them. I think there's lots to think about. It's like all of us as citizens are responsible as individual Robert Moseses in trying to figure out where are we going and what does it look like. So that's my attempt at a suggestion.
It's quite an end with Robert Moses. Okay, thanks a lot, Bob. If you could write up, how you'd like to have it sort of codified as a document piece, as an addition to a document on the guidelines or design principles, that would be really helpful. All right, I think everyone has opined on this particular topic, at least for the time being. And if you don't mind just in the next week to just, if you have any thoughts that you can want to give, and after reading the document, if you haven't, that would be really helpful. And then we can revisit this at a future meeting.
Hey, Alice.
So I think, yeah.
Hey, this is Wendy. I just, the one thing that we know also is funding is everything. And that's why some of these puzzle pieces are happening kind of in an odd order. We've spoken about this before that, if you were doing this from from scratch, you'd never start with Battery Park. You would start with FiDi Seaport or the other places that are low level and all the other problems. So is that something that goes into the design principles? Because these to me sound like they're very in the clouds. And if it was a perfect world, so is there any sort of, like, I'm just trying to figure out for myself in terms of what I present to you, like, we all know what we do in a perfect world versus, okay, these things happen based on funding streams and who has their plan ready. And, when the money gets released, whose plan is the best, and then they get the money and they go forward, so, and quite frankly, it's always 20 years too late or 10 years too late, or whatever it is. These things take forever. So I'm just curious about what I'm a little bit like, some of this stuff is too perfect for the reality of what really is happening.
Well, as many principles are. But I think you're onto one in terms of funding and prioritizing those projects that have the most acute need. I mean, I think that's a very logical, thoughtful, fair principle, one that unfortunately didn't get followed in our neighborhood, but I think it's certainly one that is an important principle. And I don't know that it's in the 16 that we have, maybe somewhere in the fine print, but I definitely think that's one to add. It's a great idea. But to say that they're not going to be somewhat utopian, well, that's kind of the nature of laying out principles that you're trying to meet. Okay, anybody else? If not, I think we can, and they're related. Oh, Jeff, go ahead. Sorry. Yep.
I'm responding to Wendy, and of course, maybe this is a good segue into our next subject of budget
exactly.
requests. I agree with what the general sentiment, Wendy, of what you said, but I certainly wouldn't want us to be standing on that principle and saying, well, you got money for X project, don't start there because Y project is of greater need, and as a result, neither project gets done. Maybe tweaking with either a category that's in here already or phrasing the category as, maximize, priority in terms of need and benefit not necessarily saying to the exclusion of budgetary realities, because we want to get things built. And if money happens to be available for one and not the other, let's build the one that we have money for rather than holding it up. So, but on the segue to if we're okay to go into the budget now.
Would be better. Perfect, Jeff. Thank you.
I raised the issue of, do we want to request, I mean, I took a look at the link of what we've requested in the past. And we haven't, although we mentioned FIDI Seaport master plan, we do it in the context of, add the combined sewer overflow or whatever to it. We don't actually say we want capital funding for the master plan. And I'm not sure how we've handled this in the past. I do see that we asked for funding for the west side in the past, and I think we should ask for that again. I mean, we've done a lot of talking about that. It's kind of easy to say what we said there, funding for design and planning and construction of west side protection. It's a little bit more difficult for FIDI Seaport because we don't know the details of the plan. And do we say we want capital funding for a plan that we haven't actually approved yet? But we certainly want, or at least speaking for myself, I want funding for a plan to protect FIDI and Seaport, and I recognize it's going to be a ton of money, and so we need to start asking for it now, or else it's never going to be built. So I'm not sure how to word it, but I think we should have in there a request for the funding to build the protections that the master plan is designed to protect in FIDI Seaport. I'm not sure how to word it, but
that's pretty close, I would say. Lucian, can you pull up the document that we're looking at? I mean, that Jeff's referring to.
I'll put it on the screen.
What'd you say?
We'll keep discussing, and I'm going to pull it up.
Oh, okay. Well, I've taken a note on Jeff's suggestion. Has everybody had an opportunity to look through the budget from last year? I mean, and if you haven't, you can simply just go ahead and, state things that you'd like to see included, whether or not they have it or not, while we wait for Lucian to pull up the document. Anybody else on the budget and what they'd like to see for the next fiscal year in terms of environmental protection? Yep, well, there we go. So you can see on the right, the ones that are in green, environmental protection, are the ones that we've had, starting with composting, to ensure composting and recycling funds are reinstated. Oops. I guess we could take a show of hands if somebody wants to lobby against something, or Lucian, if something's already been achieved. I didn't sense that anything happened. Let me know.
We get feedback from OMB and the agencies on certain things. So certain things that have been funded, if it's a capital item, we'll move over here to the green where it says continued support. We can have as many of those as we'd like. What we try to limit, to be selective, are the expense items and the capital items. Now, this committee really dwells in the area of capital budget items. In terms of expense, the things that I can think of immediately are maybe funding the teams to deploy deployables. But for the most part, where you dwell, this committee really is a capital expense kind of stuff. So stormwater retention, resiliency, they're all capital items.
But is planning a capital item?
Planning, yes, planning does fall into expense. That is a soft cost, yes.
Because that's what I was wondering, because I don't see much under planning, which is where, a lot of this is right now, is the planning phase. So we want to,
So I don't think there's anything there for resiliency planning at this moment.
Well, are we looking to get, okay.
So I would say if you wanted to add an item, describe it, and I'll put that in there. for the exec committee meeting. That's what this committee wants, is if you want to do the FIDI Seaport master plan item as Jeff described, then we can add that in.
Well, that was the question as to whether that's falling under expense as
Yeah, I
planning,
believe that's expense.
or which they already have a fair amount of planning, but we're also looking for capital money to make the plan happen. So
Yeah, my request was intended to be for the, it sounded like they've got their expense budget kind of under control.
right.
But that, put in a plug for the actual capital funding, the $6 billion or whatever it's going to take. I mean, I think you made the point that you're going to hopefully get federal dollars out of that. But as we all know, many of these federal projects require local sharing of the capital expense.
Yeah. I'm just trying to read this.
I'd also remind people that Alice's reminder of this meeting includes a link to this budget thing if people wanted to scroll through it, if they have access to their computer while we're at the meeting here.
And what I'll also
Thank you.
is this is a special view that I've created just for this meeting that also has the ideas that were put in. So if you recall, there's a form at the bottom of the budget site where you could submit ideas. So the ones that were submitted are here at the bottom.
I see.
Oh,
So
but
that's not all germane. I filtered out anything that was in DOT, EDC, Parks, DEP, Mayor's Office for this committee meeting, because you would be wading through lots of items that don't have anything to do with resiliency, at least at face value. So I cut down the list for this meeting. So I'll put the link in the chat so people can look at this view as well, the one I'm looking at.
Lucian, can you filter it just for the Environmental Protection Committee of Origin?
See, the issue there is that not everything is coded committee,
okay.
so you would lose most everything. Some of these were created before I was coding them, so that data doesn't exist.
So, hey, Lucian, one of my continuous complaints is signage and educating the public and engaging with, when people are walking the streets and engaging in the site, and even, to explain what's coming or why it's coming, which I still haven't seen anything to me that even matches. Like, for example, when I was in Washington, D.C., along their wharf, they have actually a sculpture and then several piers in the water that are, just so self-explanatory that anyone can understand what's happening. And all of our signage so far, to me, is so opaque. It's very hard to find what the point is. So, what is that? What is signage? I mean, it's an expense, but what does it fall under? Is it education, or is it, is it a capital? It's not capital. It's not. It's planning.
No, probably not capital. It's
Yes.
I mean, I would say if the sign is the design, you'd say like design signage, but you would put that in the agency that would be responsible for it.
Yeah, and it's not just signage. It's almost like, in DC, they have a sculpture that's in the water that explains, past storms, future storms with, sea level, what it would be if you add the sea. I mean, it's really amazing what DC does to explain what's happening. I was like, oh, this is what we should have. I mean, other cities are doing this. I'm sure the Dutch are doing this, but I'm constantly frustrated that the average person can't walk along our waterfront and figure out our problems. I'd like them explained.
Well, it's sort of an educational outreach. I wonder if it really falls into youth and education, or, it's really kind of.
Well, I mean, youth and ed is so DOE specific.
Yeah.
They're not going to touch this.
Not sure. Anyone have thoughts?
I mean, to me, the EDC should do that, or somebody. I don't know. The mayor's office. I'm not sure.
That's a good point.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it certainly would be a living classroom if there was curricula that were designed around.
And I don't even think it's curriculum for kids. I think it's curriculum for the average citizen. I mean, I think one of my frustrations is that, a lot of the problems we're having today is that we didn't educate for the last, 6 years what's coming. And by the time it came, people got really upset, rightly so. And the neighborhood wasn't engaged along the way to what, I think what others have brought up. And we could do it in a more, actually interesting way that gets people's attention.
Well, Wendy, can we impress upon you to write something up that we can put in here? I mean, I'm to maybe do it right
Definitely.
now, but I'm sure you'll come up with
I'm
it. It
happy to
sounds
do
like
it. I don't know the right answer, but I can tell you what my ideas, but I think there's smarter people than me to know how to do it.
Well, anyway, I doubt that, but that, just so that the city agent could sort of appreciate what it is that we're asking for, and then how it might get funded. I think it's well worth trying for. So I would support it unless somebody objects. I'm for adding it. And please, if this is a committee review, so if you have any other thoughts on it. I do notice that everything coming in capital, Lucian, for example, the whole west side, this whole review that, we're calling for on the west side of Manhattan. One is the plan of it. There's no plan. And the second, so it costs money to have a team look at plans for this area, which have yet to be looked at. And then the other is, of course, to actually the implementation. So I don't know if this is divided up. You have it all under capital, but just, I'm not sure how to best do that.
Yeah,
but
I think we, at exec, we will certainly be moving certain things based on feedback that we've gotten from OMB. We'll need to shift a lot of things, combine things, but right now, if there's anything that you see that should definitely be removed or added, that's certainly, I think this is a good opportunity for those discussions.
I was just going to ask about the birds. Where did that was up at the top. That did not get done? I mean, there was something that we got accomplished and I wasn't sure. Yeah, did we get fun? I mean, was that what happened with that?
I have to check back with Audubon to see. I don't know if the city passed any rules around special glazing or bird glass.
Okay, well, it'll be interesting to know what happened with that one because I know we really wrote.
Deborah Glick actually was the sponsor of that. That's
something was passed.
Yeah,
that's what I thought. So I guess I would, just make sure we're not asking for something we already got. I feel like there's a lot missing here, and I just couldn't find. It's like seems like an infinite number of things we don't have in the world of environmental protection. But I don't know if other folks have any thoughts here.
Our jurisdiction isn't garbage pickup and that kind of thing.
That was funny you mentioned it. I wasn't sure if that's a quality. That's so funny. That was on my list. Is that a quality of life?
Weed out a lot of stuff, but I also didn't want to be super. I mean, if there's any way that you all can intersect with it, because the committee, the ways that committees are drawn for CB1, sometimes it's very clear. Like transportation has transportation, but because it can be so amorphous, or you could pull. There's some aspect of when agencies work that may be germane to resiliency. I didn't want to totally weed everything out. That's why there's still a lot of items, because you may look at something and say, oh, this is something that we've discussed this year that maybe sanitation has some role to play, or maybe Department of Buildings has some role to play. So I didn't want to like prejudice your discussion by weeding out everything that may be somewhat appropriate. So I kept some agencies on, just to not.
Well, I mean, I see there is a garbage pickup thing that was in there from last year, and it doesn't identify the origin, but it only talks about increased pickup and more shifts and so forth. But there's a fundamental problem in the whole methodology of garbage collection in Manhattan generally, and certainly in most of lower Manhattan. And whether I don't know what the solution is, but you can imagine an expense budget for studying it and coming up with a solution, as whether it's centralized. Some other solution other than throwing the bags out on the street, 3 days a week or however frequently they're cluttering the streets.
You know, the city's launching this program to have different hours for, did you read about this? For different hours for street cleanup, and also to have things put now into bins, which are.
In the bins, right, yeah.
Anyway, I think it's an important one. I know we have something about recycling and composting here, as I recall.
Oh, yeah, there is a composting.
Right.
Ensure composting and recycle are reinstated. I think they have been reinstated.
Not entirely, but I don't mean for you all to you know, to get in the weeds on sanitation. I just want to, just in case there, I mean, I haven't been with this committee for very long, and so I don't want to cut something out that you all may be interested in, or if there's a discussion around something that resembles something that's already on there, where there may be overlap, that you know that we could see that pop up. I just, you know, truly, you know, DOT, EDC, DEP, the mayor's office, they're really the OEM. They're really the ones that I think I've seen the most crossover with your committee over the last year. But I just don't, you know, I didn't want to cut something out that then somebody say, oh, what about that? You know, that one item.
Yeah, I don't see anything that needs to be cut myself, at least at my review. Maybe someone else does, except for the birds, if that's already been achieved. And maybe things have to be tightened up a little, look again, but everyone should definitely, you know, suggest anything additional or something that, you know, could be tweaked to sound a little bit more clear if they're not clear. So this is the night to do it.
Yeah.
And you can send this again to Lucian and me, and Wendy. If,
Yeah.
you know, we'll put it into the document for review at executive. Carrie, I see your hand raised. Thanks, Carrie, for hanging in.
One thing you might add is the it sort of relates to DOT, but a lot of things relate to DOT now. Is much of Lower Manhattan is vaulted. So when we start looking at ways to do stormwater capture, we also have to look at containerized trees. And containerized trees require revocable consents from DOT, but they are terrific ways of capturing, you know, and filtering stormwater. So, you know, at one point, Friends of Duane Park did a study, and there's room for like 3,000 trees on sidewalks, on our vaulted sidewalks. But they're a terrific opportunity for stormwater capture and adding permeable landscape on top of our vaulted sidewalks.
That's a great suggestion. I somehow think something like it, although not about the vaulted sidewalks, which is a really interesting point, is in the parks asks, if I'm not mistaken. But I like the idea of the sort of specificity of the underground vault being used as a potential capture area, whether it's for trees or other types of bioswale greenscapes.
Right. I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't point out Duane Park has that expansion request that's already in the budget, and that significantly expands, you know, reduces the heat island and expands the planted area. So that's already in the budget request items I saw. But the idea for containerized trees, you know, and trying to at least add a permeable space on top of impermeable space, I think is another thing that we could implement and study if we needed to.
Does anyone have an objection? I certainly don't.
More trees are better. Yes, this is good. Thanks, Carrie. That's wonderful detail.
So if, with your approval, what I would like to do is, I think we could formulate this as a requesting the DEP study the use of containerized trees in areas that don't permit standard tree pits to be dug, to reduce heat island effect and keep stormwater out of the combined system. So I think formulating as a DEP study may be the way to go on that.
But we also, I mean, is there a place where we could be asking for, you know, impermeable areas to be changed to being permeable? You know, that we start to look at more resilient materials.
Well, I think we have that for a standing item for bioswales, where we're asking for bioswales in areas where it's hardscape, but there is space to create permeable area within the right of way. But what Carrie's saying is on top of vaulted areas or areas with
That's different.
then that could be a good alternative and to create shaded green areas. And so I think keeping those two separate, but then linked as both DEP items may be good, because we need to be pretty specific when it comes to these requests.
Great. Anybody else have any suggestions, edits, additions, or we're going to close that pretty soon? It's not, as I'm if not mistaken, everyone could come to executive and discuss this further. Is that right, Lucian?
That's right. And so,
Yeah.
so what I have here for the 3 new requests, I have containerized trees for vaulted or areas where you can't dig. I'm going to maintain the DEP stormwater retention request, and then there was a discussion about having or supporting the capital funding. I have put a capital funding request for FiDi Seaport.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to adjourn this meeting unless anybody objects. Do I have a second? I see Wendy smiling.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, everybody. That's really interesting. And good night.
Good night.
See you soon. Bye.
night.
Thanks a lot.
Good meeting, Alice. Thank you.
Oh,
Good night,
pleasure.
everyone.
Thanks. Good
Bye
night.
bye.